The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, the House of Representatives will vote tomorrow on impeaching Donald Trump again. Meanwhile, more than a dozen Capitol Police are investigated for suspected involvement in the Capitol attack. Lawmakers are briefed on more potential attacks, including across the country in state capitals. And the threat was also inside the House. Republican lawmakers refuse to wear masks and have apparently created a potential super spreader event that has infected now 3 Democratic lawmakers that we know of. Trump administration now calls for a simpler vaccination metric, everyone over the age of 65. Mike Pompeo pushes the Iran to Al-Qaeda connection, supposedly, and designates Cuba a terrorist state. Trump reportedly considering a self-pardon. That was until his lawyers told him it could cost him in lawsuits. Acting DHS Chad Wolf resigns in odd case of timing. The ACLU pushes Acting Attorney General Rosen to postpone 3 executions that are scheduled for this week. And Patriots coach Bill Belichick takes a pass on Trump's offer of the Medal of Freedom. Lastly, Sheldon Adelson, the anti-union billionaire and massive Trump donor, dies. All this and more on today's program. I should also say that later in the program, we are anticipating having Brendan Gudenschwager on. He is an independent journalist who was covering the Capitol attack the other day and was in the building. We hope to have him on the program later in the program. It is Tuesday, and as she is every day, Emma Vigeland is here. And Emma, I have to say, today it really struck me that I have been able now for over a week to say 2021 at the beginning of the intro of the show as opposed to 2020, and I'm very proud of myself.
Good job. Good job. It's the small wins
exactly
in the year of 2021.
Exactly. We've got to count the it's the small things that have to keep us happy as we are winding our way through this this pandemic that we're all enjoying. And there is reports that the Trump administration is going to just simplify the metric on the vaccinations, 65 and older, make it simpler, get them out the door. There was a report in the Financial Times today that Pfizer seems to have found the capacity to make 500 million new doses, which complete speculation on my part. I think it's quite a coincidence that as a president who is about to be inaugurated in 8 days has thrown around the idea of a Defense Production Act order that it has encouraged the maker of at least one of the vaccines to find more capacity on their own to do this. We will see if that precludes it. I did see a report today that Biden is expecting more from his is unhappy with his team, his vaccination team, and wants to, they're hedging on the 100 million doses within the first 100 days. And we will talk about that later in the program. But of course, the story of the day is that tomorrow, we have today now, impeachment resolution has been released, and it will be voted upon tomorrow, is my understanding. Donald Trump came out today, gave a speech, I guess a press conference. I don't even know how to describe it, really.
Not a tweet. Not a tweet.
Not a tweet. No,
it is a little unnerving not to know what's rattling around in that man's brain. We just have to hear him talk, and then
I think you can guess. But
he's pretty
yes.
simple. Yes.
Here is Donald Trump surprisingly coming out against impeachment. This is Donald Trump from outside the White House.
This impeachment is causing tremendous anger, and you're doing it, and it's really a terrible thing that they're doing. For Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to continue on this path, I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger. I want no violence. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
I mean, I'm sort of at a loss for words, because there is not, as far as I know, there is not a word in the English that would capture the amount of gall that he's talking about, that it must have to be worried about violence and worried about danger, because there would be some measure of accountability. We're not talking about taking him to the gallows. We're talking about a vote to to impeach him. It's at this point, it is up to the Republicans and up to Mitch McConnell if he is removed from office. Because of the timing, the Senate is out of session until the 19th. The Democrats can impeach him tomorrow, or they could impeach him later in the week in the House. He's impeached. They could send it to the Senate end of day tomorrow, theoretically. But because the Senate is not in session until the 19th, Mitch McConnell could decide not to deal with it, wait a day. He's got no other business, perhaps. And we wait until the inauguration of Joe Biden, and the impeachment continues. There's a trial in the Senate under new Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Donald Trump would not be removed from office. So the idea that this is in some way, this is an incitement to violence, when we have already seen the violence, when we already know all the plans to attack capitals across the nation, where we have literally thousands of National Guards troop who are going to be stationed for the inauguration and presumably are on alert right now, is absurd. It is absurd.
Well, look what you're making us do.
Yeah, exactly. He incited violence for his own purposes, and now he's pretending to be against violence for his own purposes, aka self-preservation. He's hoping that the threat of violence, it could happen, I don't know, there could be some violence, will scare lawmakers and Democrats into not following through with this. And what does scare me is right now the caucus seems very united. They got something like 218 co-sponsors of this resolution, I think, before the ink was dry on it. Well, they had some defectors at first. I'm forgetting his name, but the representative from Oregon who, joins Lipinski as the most conservative Democrat. They're kind of a tandem. He had been saying that he wasn't in favor of it, but those voices kind of dwindled quickly because, look, I mean, it's human nature. The reality of it is that all of these lawmakers experience trauma based on being locked in safe rooms where now there's COVID. They were infected with COVID, Pramila Jayapal included. After there was an insurrection attempt and there were people trying to take them as hostages. I mean, they're beyond the political ramifications of impeachment. We need to do it because I think it's a smart political thing to do. It's also the right thing to do to hold this kind of behavior to account. There's an emotional element for the lawmakers as well. They were scared, rightfully so.
And I think the sort of the drip of footage and reporting that has come out in the wake of all of this. I mean, I think it's taken a couple of days, but there's now footage of a police officer being dragged by the foot and dragged downstairs and punched and beaten.
A video of a police officer donning a red MAGA hat as well.
And then we have
Capitol Police.
the new information that the Capitol Police have suspended several members of their force. They're investigating over a dozen members of their force for potentially not only showing some measure of messages of support for the rally that preceded the attack, but that there had been inappropriate images of President-elect Joe Biden on their social media account, etc. And so there's concern. There is some concern that maybe there was some, I guess, like, I don't want to say inside job here, but that there was, like, at the very least, some sympathetic members of the Capitol Police Force who helped. I mean, this is a very serious situation.
And it's a broader problem because police are just more sympathetic to right-wingers than, you can not make it as insidious as an inside job and talk about the structural problem of policing in this country, which is that it's sympathetic to and often comprised of people with white supremacist leanings far too often, and also just sympathetic to right-wing authoritarianism in general.
It's fascinating, and we're going to see. We're going to take a break here in a moment, but we're going to play a lot of footage today. Not a lot of footage, but a couple of clips of conservatives, Republicans, basically talking about this dynamic of aggrievement, that we don't want to commit any violence. And of course, we're not going to do it. It's just like people of our ilk are going to commit violence if you insist on holding us to account for the violence that we've already committed. This dynamic, I want to make this clear. This is not an invention of Donald Trump. I think it was maybe 10 years ago. I was on a panel with Whitman. She was the former EPA secretary under George W. Bush. And I think she was also at one point New Jersey governor, if I remember correctly. She was making the case that the reason why conservatives wouldn't accept the idea that global warming could be real is because liberals pushed it too much. This dynamic of your insistence on accountability, your insistence on believing facts is what's driving us to not believe facts, or what's driving us to commit violence. This is like the way that with all due respect to my 7-year-old son, small children behave.
Yep.
And the idea of, I have no agency. I only react to your insistence that we function the way that you're supposed to function in a civilized society is enough to make me not act like you're supposed to act in a civilized society. This is not a legitimate counter argument to anything. It's not legitimate just in and of itself, and it certainly should not be something that drives the decision making by adults in this country.
Well, because it's essentially a threat, right? In a lot of ways, it's how like an abusive husband would behave, right? Like, well, I committed violence before, and if you hold me to account, you
call
don't know
the cops. Yeah, who knows what we're gonna do.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Right. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this. In the meantime, I mentioned my 7-year-old son. He's been reluctant as of late to eat breakfast. And there's literally one thing that I can get him to eat.
Magic spoon.
That's right.
I stepped on your...
You stepped on my big reveal.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. This episode is brought to you by Magic Spoon. Kids love cereal. I loved cereal when I was a kid. They had that sugary goodness, all the different flavors, the chocolate, the fruity, the blueberry, the frosted. The problem is, of course, it was full of junk and a ton of sugar. And my whole thing now is I want as little sugar as possible, not just for me, but for my kids. And Magic Spoon has all the amazing flavors you love, but without all the bad stuff. Magic Spoon is a cereal company. It's discovered a way to recreate your favorite childhood cereals with 0 grams of sugar, 11 grams of protein, and only 3 net grams of carbs in each serving. And now, because so many of you have asked, you can finally build your very own custom variety box. You get 4 packages of cereal in a box. Now, Emma, you can look over there. As you can see, I did not get a variety because my favorite is cinnamon. I get all cinnamon, but that's all right. You don't have
all
to be
4
like me.
Cinnamon?
I did, yeah. Although I actually got 2 boxes. I get 1 peanut butter in each of the boxes. But,
yeah. No, it's something I would do. I get it.
You can choose from the best-selling cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry flavors, plus brand new flavors, including peanut butter and cinnamon. Now, it's not on the copy, and I'm probably not even supposed to say this, but they had a brief run of gingerbread, and I am not allowed to eat any of that because that is Saul's favorite. And I got to say, it's really good. Hopefully they'll bring that back, but they cycle through seasonal flavors. It's keto friendly, it's gluten free, it's grain free, it's soy free, it's low carb, and it's GMO free. It is honestly, it's delicious. Throughout the day, I will graze on a little bit of Magic Spoon, a little cup. I know I'll eat it dry. I don't care. MagicSpoon.com/Majority Report. You can grab a variety pack today and try it. Be sure to use our promo code Majority Report at checkout. Save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product. It's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they refund your money. No questions asked. That's MagicSpoon.com/Majority Report. Use the code Majority Report to save $5 off. Thank Magic Spoon for sponsoring the podcast and, frankly, my breakfast. And, frankly, half of the meal I eat all day now. I'm full on just Magic Spoon. Oh, but the only other thing, and I literally just had one, hours ago. This episode is also sponsored by Munk Pack. Again, fulfills my no sugar pledge to myself. They make snacks that taste like our favorite sugary treats, but with 1 gram of sugar or less. Munk Pack keto, nut, and seed bars contain 2 to 3 grams of net carbs. They're only 150 calories. They come in delicious flavors like sea salt, dark chocolate, pecan almond, which happens to be my favorite, peanut, dark chocolate. They are keto friendly. They are gluten free. They are plant based, and they are non-GMO. I literally just had one this morning. I was trying to save it for the read, but it didn't work out. But
you just couldn't help yourself.
No, they're delicious, and I like some nuts and seeds. It gets me going, and I feel good about giving it to my kids too. I mean, this is the thing. It's like I'm trying to find snack food that I can give to my kids, that I can take myself, that doesn't have a lot of sugar in it, that are basically that are healthy, and more nuts and seeds, good, real food, not processed. They're delicious. They're satisfying. They provide you energy. And they have this thing called allulose, which apparently exists in small amounts in like maple syrup and like raisins and figs. I don't know. It's good though. Try it for yourself and you'll see we have a special deal for our listeners. You get 20% off your first purchase of any Munk Pack product by visiting monkpack.com, entering our code Majority Report at checkout. And Munk Pack is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't like it for any reason, they'll exchange the product or refund your money, whichever you prefer. To get started, just go to monkpack.com. That's Munk, M-U-N-K, Pack, PACK.com. Select any product, then enter the code Majority Report at checkout. Save 20% off your purchase. That's nuts. Munk Pack, delicious, nutritious food you can count on. We thank them for sponsoring this podcast, and something I eat on a regular basis now. So, and speaking of a longtime sponsor of this program, I mentioned this yesterday, but I convinced somebody already to get their Dob kit too.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Who'd you convince?
Oh, a buddy of mine. Sometimes I don't want to talk out of town.
All right.
But somebody's like, I need one of those. I'm getting one right now. Harry's team combined a simple ergonomic design with 5 sharp blades. That's what the Harry's razor is all about. They source their steel from Sweden. They manufacture their blades in their own factory in Germany. They cut out the middleman. They ship it directly to you. You save money. You save a trip to the store. You don't have to go. I don't know if you've ever been aware of this, but men's razors anyways, they lock them behind the case because they're like these like Buffy things that.
Yeah, they do that for women's razors too.
It's ridiculous.
It's annoying.
And then they package them in these like, I don't know, it's like the Superman Ice Fortress type of thing. But you can start the new year with some savings. New customers can redeem a Harry's trial set for just $3 when you go to harrys.com/majority. Plus, Harry stands by the quality of their blades so much they have a 100% money back guarantee on harrys.com. Look, I'm not going to promise. I already made this clear yesterday. I'm not going to until this thing is over. I'm probably not going to shave, certainly any more than I already have. Like I'm down to like once, maybe twice a week now.
Okay, all right.
But
I get it. It's a pain.
But I'm up in my game with the Dob kit that I'm getting from them, or whatever they call it, the toiletry kit, because I'm not going to carry around my junk in a plastic bag anymore. Because I got to move around a lot with the kids and stuff like that. So
no plastic bag.
No plastic bag. But you can go to Harry's right now, and if you have never tried Harry's before, now is the time. They have a special offer for listeners of my show. New customers can get a Harry's starter set for just $3 at harrys.com/majority. You'll get a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel with aloe, travel color. I also got to say, the blade is a trimmer blade, which is important for me. I've got some nostril challenges.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. I probably didn't need to tell you that.
Well,
for just $3. $3 for a starter set. 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel with aloe, and a travel color, $3. Get everything you need for a close, comfortable shave. Go to harrys.com/majority to claim your offer. Check it out now. All right, let's get into this. While we're talking about impeachment, the polling on this, and I don't think it's terribly relevant, frankly, we saw the polling go way up as soon as the Democrats started impeaching last time. And I think the polling is, to a certain extent, it's largely irrelevant in the context of this equation. There is something that we simply cannot tolerate as a society if we send the message that this is okay, and that as long as you don't threaten us anymore, we won't hold anybody to account. We are just inviting more of this moving forward. And
polling isn't static, let me just say.
Exactly.
You can influence it,
exactly,
as we did with the first impeachment. Democrats did.
We're going to play a series of clips of right-wingers saying, like, oh, you better not impeach. It's going to make people angry. I mean, hello. There seems to be some anger out there right now. And what we need to do as a society is indicate what is an appropriate way to express that anger. Here we have, however, in Bloomberg, and this is just like another impetus, and this has more to do, it seems to me, with the ability for Democrats to do two things. One, to pass and promote and to, I guess, initiate good policy, but also good politics. And that is that there is a force pushing against Democrats, which Republicans have all but abandoned at this point because just their agenda dovetails quite nicely with these people. Bloomberg reports that former Senate Democratic leader Tom Daschle and former Senate leader Trent Lott, they actually had a 50-50 split during the late 90s, mid 90s. Similar situation. Bill Clinton was the president. Al Gore presided over the Senate. So they had worked out, because you've got to negotiate. How many people do we have on a committee, et cetera, et cetera. Former Senate Democratic leader Tom Daschle warned his party against impeaching President Donald Trump for inciting the mob attack on the Capitol, arguing that even a delayed Senate trial risks impending urgent action President-elect Joe Biden must take to bolster the economy and combat the COVID-19 pandemic. An impeachment mechanism is just not the right course at all if they want to hold the president accountable, Daschle said at a forum on Monday with Trent Lott, held by the Bipartisan Policy Center. First off, a couple of points on this. One is that even with the House run by Newt Gingrich back in the 90s, which was in many respects the prototype for the Republican Party we see today, in a very specific way. The whole thing where it's like you get overly aggressive and you call Democrats Democrat because you've tested with Frank Luntz that it reminds people of the word rat. That's why they do this, and that's where it came from, that era. The Senate hadn't quite been infected by this Republican, just completely off the rails. Never mind their policy set, but the way that they did their politics. Trent Lott had to resign in the early aughts from Senate Majority Leader because he spoke at a birthday party for Strom Thurmond, who was at that time well into his 90s, still in the Senate. He was I think it was in the 40s, a Dixiecrat candidate who was running on a platform of segregation. So Trent Lott's at the birthday party. We all love you, Strom Thurmond. We all know this would have been a better country had you won the presidency. Guys running on a segregation platform.
Yeah, also Joe Biden eulogized Strom Thurmond.
Indeed.
Let's just point that out.
That's true. But Trent Lott was called, for that comment, his resignation was called for. Now, there's a lot of people who think that Bill Frist had something to do with that. He was the one who was waiting in the wings to take over from Trent Lott, and that this was promoted by right-wingers who want to get Trent Lott out because what had happened in the House in terms of Republicans was happening in the Senate. And Trent Lott was a little bit too respectful of bipartisanship at that time. That is one of the stories. We are so far from that era of Senate comedy, not comedy, haha, but comedy in terms of
comedy with a T,
collegiality.
Yes.
Which is why this is just a bizarre thing that Tom Daschle's talking about, that there's legislation that's going to get 10 Republican votes in the Senate. There is not legislation that's going to get 10 Republican votes in the Senate. I'm sorry. There is none. Certainly not on any big spending bills. There's just no way. There's nothing for them to bring to the American public. They've already gotten the tax cuts that they want.
Yeah.
There is, other than like cuts on Social Security or whatever, there's nothing for the Republicans in terms of spending to deal with COVID. That's all going to have to happen through reconciliation, which requires only a simple majority and is not subject to a filibuster by the Republicans. And we will talk more about the dynamics of reconciliation. Now, Tom Daschle surely knows this. Trent Lott surely knows this. They both are lobbyists and advisors to politicians. So this is really just like, we have a problem. Nobody's listening to Trent Lott anyways.
No.
But we have a problem with, in Democratic politics, and just broadly speaking, because Democrats also represent the center now, as well as the left and the center left, that when you see the word bipartisan, more often than not, much more often than not, it is basically moneyed interests trying to make sure that we get into a situation where there's as little change as possible. You can go ask your mortgage broker right now. What do you feel about the potential of what happened to mortgage rates after the Democrats won in Georgia? it was starting to creep up because the idea is going to be there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be spent. And that's going to make treasury bills less enticing. So they're going to have to raise rates. I mean, the idea of static, of nothing happening, is good for money, for big and when you have people like Daschle and Trent Lott who are lobbying these people, this is what you're going to get. And fortunately, the Democrats don't seem to be listening to this type of rhetoric anymore. Or at least in this moment, because like you pointed out, this is something that's very personal for them because they were stuck in that building as cops were being beaten to death, as cops are being dragged out, as people are smashing windows, as people walking around with zip ties, as they're building a noose and a gallows out front. I mean, this is nuts. And here is your buddy Darrell Issa on Fox Business News talking about how Democrats are overplaying their hand if they think they can hold people to account for this.
We need to go to Darrell Issa for strategy discussions.
Here he is with Maria Bartiromo.
That an impeachment trial wouldn't begin until 1 o'clock on January 20th after the president is a former president. So a trial would never actually happen. So what is this then? Is this for show? Is this so that he won't run again? If the reality of it, with 9 days left, that it actually can't happen in terms of a trial?
Well, it's probably similar to shutting off the Twitter feed of somebody after his presidency is essentially over. It's kicking when he's down. It's getting rid of 88 million people who follow and listen to the president. There's no question at all that I think the liberals saw an opportunity, a misstep by the president that they're going to overplay, and they're overplaying it as we speak. They're overplaying a lot of things, including the death of these people on Capitol Hill. It was a terrible event, terrible things. People need to be punished, but of course they're trying to use it to imply that there's only one side that has violence, and completely ignoring all of last year and the unchecked violence from the left.
So Darrell Issa is just very concerned about the overplaying and the dramatization and the political usage of deaths of people.
Can you imagine also like sort of equating the Twitter followship of somebody as some type of like civic right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But the point is that Darrell Issa was one of the key Republicans in the Benghazi hearings.
Yes.
Tens of Benghazi hearings. 4 people died in Benghazi, 4 Americans. 5 Americans died in the Capitol assault. He's concerned about overplaying something.
Donald Trump had a misstep. He had a misstep. He accidentally stumbled into promoting the seizure of the Capitol building and the stringing up of the vice president who would not overrule
Trump accidentally said
election.
Irregardless. It was a misstep.
It was a misstep.
And then people rioted. Issa, and again, you point out the Twitter following, the false equivalence that seems to be what Republicans are going with and Fox News is going with right now. But also the weird concern for Trump's personal feelings, right? So he says they're kicking him when he's down.
Yeah.
This is like when Ainsley Earhardt was most concerned about Mike Pence and Trump's fractured relationship. Like, this isn't Days of Our Lives. This is people. These are the most powerful people in the country. I'm not really concerned about Trump's feelings about his Twitter account. That's a separate issue. What I am concerned about is the rise of fascism in the country, encouraged by the president, and holding him to account for that. Those are the big issues. Twitter's bigger, I guess.
Here is Brian Kilmeade from Fox News and Fox and Friends.
Yeah.
This morning, doing the same work. There's obviously been a set of talking points that have gone out to Trump TV, to all of the remaining Trumpistas. And that is, of course, that this is only going to divide us. The idea that you would hold people to account for storming the Capitol and killing people is only going to be divisive. It's the holding to account that's divisive. Continue. Let's play this. Clip number 3.
Right.
But I think if you want to unite the country, it's not the right way to go.
There's no doubt about it. You're 100% right. It is not the way to go. We don't care about what Nancy Pelosi thinks about the President of the United States. When is she going to understand
that's the motivation.
That we don't care. Can somebody put the country first? Right. At some point, can we stop the intramural games? It's an embarrassment. Right. It's inflaming the entire population.
We need vaccines. We need to reopen. Yeah. That's what we need to focus on.
What other proof do they need? You saw what happened. Why would you get, at the very least, even though everyone condemns it, you have to acknowledge it. The anger is off the charts. And you see it in the small delis and the restaurants that are intense and the anger that people have on every single level.
Just go on Twitter, go on Instagram, read some of the comments under Democrats or under Republicans. It's on both sides.
If your account's not frozen. Speaking of that.
Wait, what did Ducey say there at the end? The idea... I mean, it sounds to me like he's just forgiving the whole thing. And I love the idea. It's like all of these things that are wrong with our government. Well, I got news for you. Who's been controlling this? Where were you weeks ago, months ago, talking about the failure to do the things like the vaccine and whatnot? But this idea that somehow it is always when Democrats get elected, the unity is always their responsibility. And the idea that that on some level, holding these people to account, holding Donald Trump to account, is going to exacerbate. Like, what happens after that? Like, how does that what is supposed to happen after that? Like, where do we, like, on this one we turn it up to 11? Like, I don't understand. We're divided. That's just the reality of this. And I think, to the credit of the Democrats, there seems to be an acknowledgement and an understanding of this, that there is no fixing this until we account for it.
Yeah. And again, I keep repeating that I think part of what a lot of people are underestimating is because it personally affected them and they personally experienced it, which isn't the best praise for the Democrats, because hopefully they could just empathize with other things and then hold Republicans accountable for the harm they cause outside of the halls of Congress. But still, this is the right thing that they're doing, and we should praise them for it. But Kilmeade, that was one of his most infuriating moments, because in the Republican world, Trump is the ultimate alpha male. We'll get to that clip eventually, right? He's the ultimate macho dude, but yet he has no agency. He has no responsibility for anything in the country, no responsibility for the divisiveness that they cite as the president of the United States, no responsibility for the lack of vaccine distribution that Kilmeade suddenly cares about and Ainsley Earhardt are suddenly really, really concerned about. He's not responsible for any of it. It's always the left's divisiveness, but only when they're in power. You're worried about uniting the country. Your guy's Donald Trump. He calls everybody names. He rips the country apart on racial lines and incited an insurrection. So when you want to talk about divisiveness, you have to do that first.
Can we say what's needed now is simple, is that all that they said about the election being stolen were lies. Because frankly, if a landslide was overturned, like what that calls for in a population is pretty severe. And until those lies are walked back and admitted for the lies they were, there's going to be a severe problem about anger in this country.
That
Trump's
is exactly,
never gonna lie.
If you want to unify
never gonna take it
this
back.
country,
Yeah.
and you have a platform like Brian Kilmeade, or you have one like Darrell Issa, you get on there and say, hey, you've been fed an entire meal of lies. The election wasn't stolen. We were wrong. We were wrong to push it day in, day out. Wrong to push this. The president's wrong, and stand down. And until until they start to push that message 24/7, even remotely close to the message that they pushed building up to the election and after the election, they have no standing whatsoever. And I want to just add this too.
Yeah.
While they're calling for all this unity, and while they're calling for all the government to do something, we now have 3 Democratic lawmakers who contracted COVID during the lockdown. Do we have a clip? And this was predicted. On the day of the lockdown, Congress people were put into secure rooms. Here is a video of Lisa Rochester. I think she's from Delaware? Punch Bowl News. Lisa Rochester, I think a congresswoman from Delaware. She's trying to hand out masks in this room, in this closed room that people are in for hours. Play this clip.
I'm not trying to get political here. In fact, I'm just going to leave it alone. I appreciate you. She is a nice lady. Who said that? Thank you, Jeff. Come over there and hug me. Don't do yourself in the face. I'm going to. I'm going to.
Are literally laughing at
her. I mean, and
mocking her.
Pramila Jayapal wrote about this too. I mean,
they are mocking her.
Right.
And since that time, there have been 3 Democratic, now we're up to 3 Democratic congresspeople who were in that space who have now contracted COVID. Bonnie Watson Coleman of New Jersey, who is 75 years old, cancer survivor. Pramila Jayapal, and now the latest is Brad Schneider from Illinois. And they were warned on Sunday of this because apparently some person in Congress went to the congressional doctor and said, I have COVID. And I was in that room and I wasn't wearing a mask. We don't know who that person was. You can bet your bottom dollar there are other lawmakers who are not reporting that they have COVID because they were in there without a mask, because it's part of their sort of their cultural identification that they are in some way incapable of catching COVID, that it's not real. Read, you have Pramila Jayapal.
Yeah, so I mean, Pramila Jayapal, one of the 10 most progressive lawmakers in Congress, her statement on her site talks about how Dr. Brian Monahan, the attending physician of the United States Congress, advised representatives and congressional staff on Sunday that those in the secured room could have been exposed to another occupant with coronavirus infection. The duration in the room was multiple hours, and several Republicans not only cruelly refused to wear a mask, but mocked colleagues and staff who offered them. I mean, we see that in the video there, but that's what Pramila Jayapal is talking about, that. And she's asking for fines levied on every single member who refuses to wear a mask in the Capitol, which should be obvious. One of the Democratic or one of the lawmakers who contracted COVID is a cancer survivor, is in her 70s, but they laugh because I don't know, they're on team cool. Like in high school, they wouldn't have had a rolly backpack. They would have had the cool ones. Like that's what they act like. It's some sort of fashion statement or some sort of cultural identifier where they get to be a part of the cool clique, the plastic.
How do you have unity without these people coming out and saying, I'm sorry, I deliberately behaved in a way that ended up giving people,
my colleagues,
COVID. I mean, it's just
people I know personally.
This is sociopathic behavior. Yep. I'm sorry. I mean, it is definitionally sociopathic behavior, and it's enhanced. The sociopathy is even enhanced by the fact that now they know that they could give it to people, that they had it and they could give it to people. Just the first instance of refusing and mocking the idea of wearing a mask is demented. But then to realize that you actually caused the contraction of this extremely dangerous virus for people age 75, for cancer survivors, and say nothing publicly. I mean, who knows? Maybe they said nothing privately. I suspect they didn't.
Yeah, it's the mindset of an authoritarian. It's the mindset of somebody who really doesn't care about other people and would rather bow their heads and not do the brave thing. And that's entirely consistent with the same lawmakers who went along in lockstep with a bully of a president, Donald Trump.
And we should say one of the other things that's embedded in the impeachment resolution is the citing of the 14th Amendment, third clause, I think it is, of the 14th Amendment, which was a Reconstruction era clause that it did not cite the Civil War, but it said generally, people who have taken an oath to the Constitution. So this is not about Confederate soldiers. It is about the leaders who literally take an oath to the Constitution, lawmakers, and attempt to participate in an insurrection. They should be banned from an elected position in the House of Representatives or in the Senate or the presidency, for that matter. And this is cited in the impeachment resolution, specifically in terms of Donald Trump, obviously. But there's also talk that maybe there must be an attempt. I think Cory Bush introduced something to this effect. I don't know if it cited the 14th Amendment to punish and to essentially eject folks like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and the others who participated in promoting what they knew was a complete lie, in an attempt to build anger and ultimately their own political power. And they just miscalculated. I was mixing up this stuff to make a bomb and it blew up in my face. That's basically what happened. And the idea that they can just go about their business now as if, where does it go? Is there any reason to believe that as they move forward in their political careers, they're going to show some measure of remorse? They can't. It is contrary to their political fortunes. They will continue on this. And if they get away with this without any accountability, it's simply going to be part of their political mystique, and they're going to build on.
Yeah, there's no accountability from their voters, which is it's not the bug, it's the feature. So there has to be accountability from within. There is no other option.
We are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Brendan Guttenswager. He is an independent reporter. He was on the scene. I don't think he got too far into the Capitol, but he was there videotaping the protest. We're going to get his perspective on these things when we come back. And after we talk to him, too, we should just touch on what Mike Pompeo, if we don't get to it today, we'll get to it tomorrow, is trying to do out the door again, to further his political fortunes. And it's going to come at the cost of increasing the chances of war in this country. Hopefully he's not successful, but we will see. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Brendan Guttenswager. Welcome back. I think we've got, do we have Brendan?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Brendan, we can't see you.
1 second. I'm trying to get this video started.
Here we go. Brendan is an independent reporter. He travels around the country capturing original videos at rallies, at protests, breaking news, and more in the U.S. Brendan, video camera going for a video?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm trying to get the camera set here. It looks like the audio is working fine, just not the video here.
Well, Brendan, don't worry about the camera. So tell us, just give us a sense of like where you were and when during the on Wednesday.
Yeah, so I had been there pretty much throughout the day. I started early in the day covering over at the Ellipse where Trump had been holding that rally, and I just continued through and followed as they then walked along Constitution Avenue, made their way over towards the Capitol, and then and then obviously everything that went on there, I just continued covering throughout the afternoon.
All right, Brendan, so just give us like a little bit of TikTok. So Donald Trump is on the stage. He leaves the stage. What happens then? Is it immediately people start to march to the Capitol?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty quickly after, pretty much once he had said, we're going to walk down to the Capitol. There were some people that got started right then and there, others that waited till he had finished and then walked over there. So, I got there just about 1 o'clock and already things were getting very, very tense there and heated just right off the bat.
Did you have a sense as you were walking over with these other folks that they what their plan was? Did they have a sense what their plan was?
Yeah, that was one thing that shocked me a lot, is that it didn't seem like it was as organized as some of the previous protests had been there in DC. At other times when they had organizations coming there and saying, we're going to meet at Freedom Plaza or we're going to meet at the National Mall, they had a stage already set up. They had speakers in mind that were already planned ahead. And in this case, they pretty much just arrived at the Capitol building and everybody was just there. And it was kind of just like a free for all when they first arrived. And I think that may have been part of what led to so much of the chaos and unrest right off the bat there, because, at other times you at least had somebody sort of leading the group, somebody there to kind of, with a megaphone or whatever, kind of directing people. And in this case, it really wasn't. Everybody had still been coming off of the Donald Trump speech over at the Ellipse. And because that went past 1 p.m., a lot of the main organizers hadn't already made their way over to the Capitol to start getting set up there. And so the crowds that were arriving were just there and trying to figure out what they wanted to do. And, and it very, very quickly got extremely rowdy there.
Wow. So there was just basically a vacuum, and it was filled by those people who wanted to get aggressive. And so then, all right, tell us what happened then. I mean, people start to, what did you see?
So, yeah, basically it started with very loud chants and people that were attempting to push back against the police. There were a lot of barricades, small barricades, not like the main large fences that you're seeing up there now. Those got very quickly pushed to the side. There were a few that police tried to hold back and keep in place. People pushed back against those. People very quickly then pepper spray and mace were deployed, and it just started to be these clashes between the Trump supporters and the police. A lot of people would gather into groups to try to just physically push against the police, use just sheer manpower to try to push back against them. In a few cases that did actually work, and they were able to push what had been a barricade further out, closer to the building, and eventually the police had to retreat all the way back to the building. As that went on for about an hour, shortly after 2 p.m., they pushed them back all the way to the building itself. And then, as everybody knows now, we're able to break inside and continue through there.
Were there protesters who were saying, "Hey, stop! What are you guys doing?" Was there some type of dissension about what was going on, or was everybody, just all in on this?
It did seem like there was a little bit of confusion there. People that weren't, definitely people that didn't want there to be violence and were not happy seeing the direct clashes with police. There were a lot of people there that seemed to try to reason with police and try to talk with them and basically say, stand down. We don't want to hurt you, but we need you to move aside. I did see a lot of that. So people that weren't calling for direct violence against the police, but basically said, we're still not going to accept having them here blocking us. And, and so they tried to do that in order to just minimize physical harm. That being said, there was still a lot of physical harm and a lot of that went on. It really seemed like there was just like a hodgepodge of mentalities and people there, because I saw just your average everyday Trump rally goers that, I could certainly never see them throwing a Molotov cocktail or anything like that. And then also people that were taking baseball bats right to the police riot shields, and people that were just actively right there on the front line. So it was a really wide variety in that crowd.
But to be clear, the variety was how much violence should we use in this process? I mean, what people don't seem to understand is that, like, when there are protests, and there are protests in Congress, it happens all the time, but people literally like orderly walk through, they go through the metal detectors, they walk in, they quietly go to where they're going, and then they protest. Like, that's the way they did it when they occupied Nancy Pelosi's office or these other things. Like, the protests are there. They are demonstrations, and that is, civil disobedience, and then they're taken away. Sometimes they're arrested. They're going in there regardless.
Yeah, and that was something that was very different from pretty much every other, Capitol protest that you can think of, is that really it was fully breached, that ultimately anybody could have walked in with anything. We were in a sense lucky that there wasn't significantly more that went on in terms of damage to the building, because people had free run of the place, free ability to go in and out there, and and essentially do whatever they wanted there. I do believe that there were some so far back in the crowd, because the crowd outside was tens of thousands. Some in the far back probably weren't even aware, as the Capitol was being breached, that that's what was happening, because it was just such a large crowd. But certainly anybody near the front that could hear the cheers and see the crowds surging forward would have been able to see. And and a lot of people chose to hold back, but kind of support from the outside, other people actively pushing forward inside, and then still others at the very front lines that were actively pushing back against the police and trying to, actually allow for the security to go down on the Capitol. I think I just got the video working, by the way.
Oh, there you go. So, Brendan, all right. So let me ask you this: Were you afraid? Were you frightened in any way?
Yeah, I mean, there were times I was, just in general with any of these riot zones, when there's so much tear gas flying around, things getting thrown in the air, and especially being someone that tends to film closer to the front lines there, you're always concerned that there's going to be something that hits you, somebody that, especially when I saw the baseball bat swinging, I was worried that at some point that was just going to get kind of like thrown off in the wrong direction, could hit me in the head.
How many baseball bats were there? I mean, were there a lot of people who were basically? I mean, you go with a baseball bat to a protest, you're armed, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you're bringing a weapon, anyways. I have not been. I've been to a lot of protests. I've been to a lot of anti-war protests, BLM protests. You don't see generally people coming with baseball bats in the middle of the day, anyways. Like, how many people were there with baseball bats, or what other weapons did you see?
Probably about a dozen that I could see with the baseball bats, although there could have been more in other parts of the crowd just because it was so large and hard to get a grasp on it all. I saw that, a lot of pepper spray and mace. People had those on them, a few tasers as well. And I'm sorry, what?
The people who were basically clamoring they had the tasers, they had the pepper spray.
Yes, yeah, a lot of the Trump supporters, that crowd had those, indeed, yeah.
Wow. And so how far into the building did you follow these people, or could you get in?
Yeah, so they had stormed on that west side, and I basically just saw the beginning parts there in the hallway, that initial corridor that goes along that side of the building. I didn't go following people into some of the offices, because they were basically trying to find individual legislators' offices, in particular Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And so, yeah, they went on kind of searching for that. I didn't follow there, although I did follow to see them in the Capitol Rotunda, as well as just some of the corridors, some of the hallways. And then, eventually just kind of monitoring over by the doors to see what was happening, because there were hundreds of people storming inside the building, But I wondered, like, were police still trying to actively prevent more from coming in? Were they just letting people in? And what I saw was kind of a mix, that they were initially trying to stop people from coming in, and they really were trying to barricade those doors shut. But just the sheer amount of the crowd, and then especially once you had Trump supporters already inside, that then allowed people to come from both sides, from the outside and from the inside, to where these doors were blocked by the police. At that point, the police just got overwhelmed and moved aside and just let people come in.
How did you know that they were looking for Nancy Pelosi's office and Chuck Schumer's office?
Some of them had been saying so even prior to all of this in the days leading up to the event, but on the day of the event too, saying, let's storm the Capitol, let's find Nancy Pelosi's office. They didn't really state what they wanted to do. I didn't in particular hear anybody saying they were trying to find her specifically, but they were looking for her office. Unclear what the ambitions were there. I do know now that there were reports that a laptop was taken out of the office. So that's something they'll probably be investigating and see what was on that, what kind of data there. But yeah.
Did you see when they were building the gallows?
No, so that actually most likely took place after they had already breached the innermost Capitol Police line and were then rushing up onto the Capitol lawn, because I saw the images of that afterward, and it appeared to have been brought after I had already been way over by the front. So I wasn't in that area to see that, but I did see the images afterward.
And when you were inside the Capitol, in the rotunda or in the front hallway there, were there people going like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be in here? Or like, what was the attitude?
A lot of people were just saying, this is our house. This is, a place that we have a right to be. It seemed to be a lot of the same attitude in that moment as previous Capitol protests, like the ones that had occupied Nancy Pelosi's office, the Sunrise Movement, etc. It was that same kind of attitude of, this is our house, so we have a right to be here, except that it was so many more people, and they basically had free run of the place, and there was really no...
Like with the Sunrise Movement occupation of Nancy Pelosi, like I say, they went through the metal detectors, walked quietly up to the office, and they sat down being prepared to be taken out by police. I mean, that's what you do for a protest. Like, you show, like, I'm willing to, this is what civil disobedience is. I'm basically willing to subject myself to the authority of the state as a way of showing the hypocrisy of the state or whatever. This seems to me to be very different. What are we just have about a minute left? Was there anything else that struck you that was particular, something we haven't talked about yet?
I just thought it was fascinating how quickly the police were overwhelmed, how they really didn't seem to have any cohesive plan in place once people were there inside the building. Because I was very concerned once I saw people storming into the building that you were going to end up with a situation where there were going to be live rounds fired off inside the building, which did end up happening in some parts of the Capitol, as we now know. Thankfully not against more people, because it could have been very, very bad. But even just like tear gassing inside the building, I had concerns that you were going to be seeing the halls of Congress filled with tear gas. And so I don't know if that is part of why they stood down against trying to fight back against people inside the building, if it was just an attempt to minimize damage to the building, because it was a very, unruly crowd moving through there at many times. And all that, it was just so fascinating to see that unfold, given everything that's happened in the past year and just the way that police have responded in other instances. I was shocked that a building that most people would have assumed was one of the most secure in all of Washington, D.C., was actually remarkably not so. And this really went on. I am surprised there weren't more injuries or deaths from it. And I hate to say that, but just given how volatile the whole situation was, and the anger and all that in the air, it is a very, very unique situation. And
well, for somebody who'd been to so many protests, to see that a little amount of police presence is pretty shocking. Brendan Gutenschwager, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, that does it for us today. We will be back tomorrow. Obviously, big day. They're going to impeach the president again. And if there's ever been a president that maybe deserved 2 impeachments, Donald Trump.
Probably.
Always liking to be a superlative. All right. We will see you tomorrow. For those of you sticking around, we will see you right now. We still got to talk about Mike Pompeo. We'll probably maybe touch on that. We'll touch that in the fun half. I mean, for Pompeo, it's all there's just like this sort of. It's almost like one of those things where it's like, where they say, I want to say Black Friday, but it's really more like a situation where, those events that they have, like, you've got 45 minutes in this supermarket, grab everything you can and put it in your cart. And on some level, it just feels like everybody, you've got all of these like Republican lawmakers and some of these Republican cabinet officials who are just like, I'm going to get as much as I can that can help me in 2024 as possible. And that's what Mike Pompeo is doing on his end. I'm going to show that I am an Iran war, hawk, that I am a Cuba hawk. I'm going to, and if I can create mayhem for the incoming presidency, I'll certainly do that. And in the case of Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and these others, it's like, I don't care what.
I'm anti-democracy. I'm not above being a complete hack for MAGA loyalists, despite the fact that I'm in the Senate. I mean, I feel like we haven't touched on this enough, how Trump has made some of these senators behave as if they're more House-like. Do you know what I mean? Like more beholden.
That's what happened. That's what I was talking about with Trent Lott.
Yeah.
That in the wake of 9/11, and not just because of 9/11, just because it takes a certain amount of time. You had the phenomena, like the House version of with Newt Gingrich, and that sort of virus, if you will, spread to the Senate. And we are very close to, it's almost like, Susan Collins is supposedly like the last holdout. Murkowski, I guess, arguably too. But even they are to the right of where even I think your typical Republican senator would have been in 1980, let's say.
Yeah, they're like Pokemon evolving. This is the second stage, and then eventually it's going to be the third, the bigger one. You got that? Saw like Pokemon?
He does. He was talking about that today. He's developing the whole thing, but I never, I did my best to just
Pokemon's cool. Like you could get into that. I mean, I think it's cool.
I certainly hope not to get into the Pokemon thing. Do we have Nomi? Is she here? Let's bring Nomi in. Folks,
she was here and then appeared.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe we can get her back. I just want to remind you, you can support this program by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, by becoming a member, you support the free show, and we give you extra content every day. Check it out. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, shop.majorityreportradio.com. That's where you get your merch. And I'm so close to getting those beanies. It takes a while for us to get the stuff because we want it all USA made and we want it all union made. So we're trying to thread a needle, and we're trying to, also make it like within reach.
Some other new merch coming as well. I got some specs from Julie the other night.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was wondering, what do you think about that? Let's just talk about it in coded language. On the cuff or on the shoulder?
I like it on the tricep.
On the tricep. Okay, fair enough. I think so too. I think the cuff is
on the tricep.
Like here.
Right.
Stuck like right there.
Well, triceps back here.
Well, a tricep. Yeah, you don't want it on the backwards, right? You want on this
Well, Julie and I had this conversation last night. I said bicep originally, and then she said tricep, and I agreed it was more tricep than bicep. So unless there's like I don't know.
All
People's triceps are different, I suppose.
Nevertheless, we're gonna have more gear coming into the shop. Also, on Nomi's show today, Hector Segura, who was a great candidate. I cannot remember where he was running in New York. I can't remember which district it was. Keela Lacey, reporter, and Edward Ongweso Jr. will be joining Nomi. Check that out. And don't forget, check out the Antifada. They are now Twitch streaming. It seems like 5 nights a week. Twitch.tv/the Antifada. Matt, what's happening on the is tonight the debut of
tonight on MBS YouTube channel, our panel, the Kindle Oldman on the Michael Brooks tribute to his comedy. So check, that'll be at 7 for everybody.
Tuning yourself.
We
What's
can't
going
hear
on?
you at all.
Oh, really? My connection's been crappy too.
We just heard Nomi swear, yeah.
Nomi, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Hey, guys, you heard me whisper that? You heard me whisper that, really?
Your audio is great. Your video, no.
Wow. Hang on one second, guys. I blew a fuse just as I was about to start on, just to join. So I apologize, guys. All right. I'm here.
Holy moly.
All right, so who's on your show today, Nomi?
Great question. I need a breath. Way to put me on the spot as soon as I get my Wi-Fi back. I know for sure we have Akila Lacey and Hector Asaguera, as well as Edward Sueso, who's going to be talking about just all the stuff that's happening with, technology, censorship, banning everybody, the jam.
Yeah, we will talk about that. Also, Daniel Bessner will be on Left Reckoning on Thursday talking about Biden's foreign policy, which, out of the gate is going to be in some way made just a little bit steeper climb because of Mike Pompeo today. But we will talk about that in the fun half. All right. We will see you in the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. I will take your IMs via our app at majorityapp.com. See you in the fun half.
In for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Almost has what?
What?
Almost says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black. African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck them. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back, I should say. God, I'm so sick of this like Zoom technology and all this stuff. Like, I'm done with it. I am done with this whole pandemic thing. I can't wait to go out and infect people with COVID. Do I become an automatic like congressman if that happens?
Yeah, pretty much.
You'll be a new Republican congressman from whatever district they gerrymander in New York.
That's the way.
Exactly.
That's the way.
Go challenge Elise Stefaniak to the right.
If I if I was to get COVID, then that would be the way that I would make my move as a right-wing podcaster. I would just at that point, like,
yeah,
that's it.
Assuming I live or horribly ill, I could just say like it's all a fraud. I knew it. I knew it from the beginning. I can't believe the whole time putting up plastic stuff in here and air filters and.
You know, I've been watching like a lot of podcasts lately on YouTube, and because we live in that space, I can't believe how many podcasters are just up in each other's faces without masks on right now. What?
Nuts. It's
I mean,
nuts.
We have the window open here. Like,
yeah, that's I just got up to turn off the heat. I get the heat and the window open. I get the air in here. I get a CO2 measuring device. We got plastic
dividers. I mean, Sam, you're like one of the least likely people I know in my life to get COVID. You take it serious.
That makes me...
He puts bubble wrap around him when he gets in the elevator.
Anybody else? I don't see anybody. That's the thing.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very careful. Very careful. It's because, I get my kids and they're hanging out. Like we got, our kids are potted with some other kids. So that you're responsible for their families too. It's just
maybe I take my statement back. I just mean you're very careful.
No, he's careful. He was the first one to talk about COVID. Like when no one was taking it serious, he's like, guys, the world's gonna get shut down. Everyone go buy canned foods now. And you're like, what? Sam, you're so paranoid. He's like, it's coming. And sure enough, a month later, he was right.
The Oracle.
I specifically remember I was chatting with somebody on one of the dating apps, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to? Should we meet before the lockdown?" And this was like in late February or something, or maybe mid-February. And they responded, "There's not going to be a lockdown here." And
you were like, "I think."
And I was like,
this courtship's over.
"Okay." I said something like I'm sort of half joking, but not really. And then like she would never respond to me after that. I was like, I said, I responded like a couple months later. I was like, I don't get any credit for that at all. Like,
yeah.
Nope. All right, fine.
Her loss.
Unmatch.
Sure enough, she was storming the Capitol and we saw her on video. So
yeah, that's right. She went on to win in Georgia's 5th district.
She is Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Exactly. I just said interest in politics. I didn't say specifically.
Yeah. When I was on those apps, I used to do I would cut off people that were not like you could do liberal, neutral, or Republican, and I'd only do liberal. Sorry, that's the only way I discriminate pretty much.
I'm basically like, if you didn't vote for Bernie, get out of my DMs now. Like, so 2 people respond.
Well,
it's much easier.
I like to argue.
It's tough.
So like the one time I matched with a conservative, it ended with them calling me a soy boy and unmatched.
What is that? I don't know this.
Yeah.
Because of there's estrogen in soy, right? So that means you're kind of like a little beta.
I'm a soy boy. All right. Well, so look, let's get to this. We were talking about all the excuses that are happening about for the actions that are taken. And it's fascinating to watch the evolution of the excuses that have taken place on the right. Like we're seeing like, well, if you hold people to account, it's going to create more division. It's going to be, at first it was all Antifa. And then it was like, well, it wasn't their fault. Oh, it's exaggerated. And then the images come out and they have to sort of retreat. Here is Charlie Kirk, who pulled down his tweet bragging about sending 8 buses of people there. This is a fascinating way to suggest that what we saw was not insurrection. This is clip number 6.
Now, we sent our students home on our buses, and they left. However, some people went to the United States Capitol and just decided to kind of sit there and watch and look and wave flags, perfectly and permissible with First Amendment rights. Now, a lesson that my parents taught me early on is as soon as you see trouble, go the other way. I do not think it was good judgment for people that started to see things happen and they're all this and they rush to the, no, that's just, here's a good rule of life. You start to see trouble, just go the other way, okay? Unless you feel as if your independent action can save an innocent person, okay? That's one nuance I'll say. If you see someone getting beaten up in a subway or something, then you could do something. But all of a sudden, if you start to see mass trouble, just go the other way. As, you know, very wise people say, nothing good happens after 2 a.m., right? Or happens after midnight. And nothing really good happens as soon as tear gas starts getting spread on the U.S. Capitol, right? And so is that a crime? No, it's not. Is it bad judgment? Yeah, it's bad judgment, okay? It's bad judgment all of a sudden to climb the Capitol steps and walk in the rotunda, and it's just, it's not wise, okay? However, not wise does not mean you're an insurrectionist, okay? Let me be very clear. Just because you do something stupid does not mean you're Timothy McVeigh. Just because you do something that is regrettable does not mean that you're planning an armed insurrection against the United States government. Now, the guy that had the zip ties, I hope he goes to jail. That's just weird, creepy, wrong, evil, okay? The guys that were assaulting police officers, jail. But the guys that were just kind of there waving flags and they're walking up the steps, and I'm sure that they regret it. I'm sure that a lot of them have said that. In fact, in a lot of these arrests, a lot of these people say this was the worst decision of my entire life. That doesn't exactly talk like a domestic terrorist trying to overthrow the government, okay? That talks like someone that got excited in the heat of the moment that did something dumb. Now, they should be held accountable.
They broke into the house first. It's not like they just dropped in there, parachuted in.
I hypocrisy shaming because it's so trite and it's so overdone. But we can't pretend that if those weren't Black Lives Matter protests or Muslim people, that he wouldn't be calling for all of them to be hung in the public square, executed, and calling for blood. If it was Muslim people, we'd be at war with every country in the Middle East right now. Doesn't matter. Oh, this some loose connection to the Ayatollah, some loose connection to Bashar al-Assad or whatever it has to be. I mean, that doesn't make sense for Muslim people.
We both just went. Well, no. But Emma, they were ready for it on the lawn. They were ready to lynch people on the lawn.
Look, there's a story that is out from the Washington Post. A day before rioters stormed Congress, an FBI office in Virginia issued an explicit internal warning that extremists were preparing to travel to Washington to commit violence and, quote, war. It's according to an internal document reviewed by the Washington Post that contradicts a senior official's declaration. The Bureau had no intelligence indicating anyone at last week's pro-Trump protest planned to do harm. In other words, the FBI had awareness of it. Situational information report approved for release the day before the U.S. Capitol riot painted a dire portrait of dangerous plans, including individuals sharing a map of the complex's tunnels, possible rally points for would-be conspirators to meet up in Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and South Carolina, and head in groups to Washington. You had on websites, as of January 5th, 2021, FBI Norfolk received information indicating calls for violence in response to unlawful lockdowns to begin on January 6, 2021 in Washington, D.C., the document says. An online thread discussed specific calls for violence, including stating, be ready to fight. Congress needs to hear glass breaking, doors being kicked in, and blood from the BLM and Pantifa slave soldiers spilled. Get violence. Stop calling this a march or a rally or protest. Go there ready for war. We get our president or die. Nothing will achieve this goal. I am sorry. I will not believe that Charlie Kirk, who is in the sort of like the middle of the nexus of all of these groups, sending 80 buses to Washington or bragging about it, not aware of this stuff, not aware of this rhetoric, not aware that these people are going in there. And the idea that like, well, you climb a wall to break into Congress. It's unwise. That doesn't mean that you're an armed insurrectionist. Well, that's right. I have two legs. The armed insurrectionist has two legs. Doesn't mean I'm an armed insurrectionist. But the fact is that I'm sorry. This is not just like, whoops. I thought we were going to go see I thought we were going to, go to the Washington Museum. I thought we were going to go to, we were going to just view the Washington Monument or something.
No, I'm a 13-year-old. I told my parents I was going to see a Pixar movie, but I went to see the NC-17 porno weirdo thing. So I could see some
honestly.
Moves. That's what it is. That's what he's acting like it is. And well, you said it best, but there's no responsibility for anybody. They pretend that no one has agency. Everyone's just a product of circumstance and also liberal media obfuscation and narratives. It's just exhausting.
But they pay for the house. It's their house. They own it. Didn't you hear what they said? They're taxpayers. They have full right to go in there and break those windows, carry whether they're armed or not. I think probably a good chunk of them were armed. I don't think it was just the ones showing their guns. Pretty sure all of them were probably armed, including Congress members who were inciting violence.
Yeah.
Speaking of Congress members inciting violence,
in the segment called Congress members inciting violence.
I mean, it's easy to talk about the idea of people being beaten and people with bats and people with zip ties and scaling the sides of the building. But what we never talk about is the loss of a book deal. Josh Hawley is here to remind us of the real tragedy that took place on that day.
Decided that the First Amendment is something they no longer support. And I'll just say this, Tucker, at a time of division, we've got to rally around the things that unites us as Americans. And I think the First Amendment and free speech has got to be at the top of that list.
So if some creepy low IQ politician says, I want to shut down the other side, okay, I get it. But a publisher is literally the guardian of the First Amendment. If you're a publisher, you exist because of the First Amendment. Your duty is to protect the First Amendment. But the people who run Simon & Schuster are now so crazed with ideology that they can't bear to hear a contrary view expressed. I mean, what does that pretend for?
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to also say that my First Amendment rights have been infringed upon because, as everyone knows, I do not have a book deal at Simon & Schuster, and that is just reprehensible. Why not? This is absurd. This is America.
Editors might be insurrectionists themselves because they don't allow you to publish whatever you want. They're basically violators of the Constitution. Editors.
I will also tell you that, how much my, First Amendment rights were infringed upon by television companies that would not let me write that I wanted to, but continue.
Country.
Well, I think it really shows, Tucker, that we're in a period where the First Amendment values and principles of freedom of speech, also freedom of worship, freedom of religion, these things are really under attack by many quarters. And again, I come back to the fact that the First Amendment is something that unites us as Americans. And in this time of division, in this time of chaos, we've got to stand strong for that.
What?
Man, I hope in their little cubicles at Simon & Schuster, they are so ashamed of themselves, having woken up this morning with an ideology hangover, that they reverse course and bring you back into the public conversation. I hope.
Ideology hangover. Wow.
Except he's a United States senator and he's on one of the top cable news shows in the country, but he's not in the conversation. He's been shut out and shunned.
He's in the intellectual dark world. He can only be seen on the floor of the Senate and on Tucker Carlson's show, soon to be on probably a Sunday talk show. This guy's been completely shut out of the discourse. Hey, you know what else unites people? The things like a shared notion of what reality is in terms of whether there's been election fraud and the presidency was fairly won. You know what else unites Americans? The idea that we have a peaceful transition of power, not one that on the day they're trying to certify the vote, you have, people bludgeoned to death in the process of trying to count that. That also unites the American public. And if you're worried about the idea, Josh Hawley, of the First Amendment, maybe you should look to the Voice of America, where a reporter got silenced because she questioned Mike Pompeo after his talk yesterday. I mean, give me a break. This is all just cosplay. I mean, and honestly, this whole crew, of this idea that Josh Hawley's book is not going to get to see the light of day. Who cares? This happens every day. Every day there are books that are not made.
What I don't understand about this is, where is he going with this? You would have thought after Wednesday, this guy who's 41 years old would not be building his entire political career off of the people who, like you said, bludgeon people to death. I'm surprised he didn't just do an abrupt shift, but he's leaning in even more.
Oh, because look, the Republicans know, they look at their
demos.
At their demographics, and they look at who their people are, and the one thing they can see, the clearest, most defined group of people they can see, are the Trump voters. That's the biggest pot of Republican voters out there, are the Trumpistas. There's other Republican voters out there, but in terms of a plurality, that is the biggest Trump.
I understand that, but given that they're being shut down, he is leaning in on something when he could just wait it out, pause. I mean, I'm thinking like Republican Josh Hawley wants to run for president mindset, not our mindset. He could pause for maybe a year just to see how things evolve. And then if the Trump population is still strong and half of them haven't died of COVID, then he could lean in again. But it's just such a weird moment to just say, I am going to go even further, even though Mitch McConnell might sanction me, even though I may not stay in office.
I don't think Mitch McConnell will sanction him. The point is and like your point is super well taken and makes a lot of sense. His strategy has been leaning in no matter what. So, and going against the grain no matter what, even if McConnell has said, right, the $2,000 checks, he did that. He spit in McConnell's face. He doesn't really care what McConnell does. He knows where the heart of the Republican Party is, and that's with Donald Trump. So he's sociopathic about this. He's pretending to be aggrieved. Like, the conflation of personal aggrievement with actual First Amendment issues is so trite and played out by Republicans, but they do it anyway. So he's trying to be proactive and build his cachet now. I'm not, unfortunately, it comes at the expense of our entire democracy, but I don't think it's a stupid strategy for him, because you got to get past the primary if you want to be taken seriously on the national stage. He's trying to make that calculation now.
And you know what? I have to say, I'm frustrated with a lot of progressives too. We should be having a conversation about unifying against, Nazis. And instead, there's this diversion of conversation about censorship, which we've been having for, 20 years on the left. And it's just very strange to be putting any of your energy right now into that. I mean, I don't think there's any difference between Josh Hawley feeling aggrieved about his supposed censorship when he could literally self-publish and probably sell out with the QAnon crowd just as easily and do it without being edited, and go on Tucker Carlson once a week and sell his book. The left doing this.
I mean, look, I think it is important, I think, to, at the very least, acknowledge that this is problematic. The idea that, that this type of censorship can take place. It is not a First Amendment issue, obviously, for private companies, but I do think that there's value in acknowledging it, because there is an opportunity to leverage some of this, to call some bluffs, and push for antitrust stuff, which is hugely important, in my estimation, to the left's agenda ultimately. Like, you don't just deal with this in the moment. You also use it and leverage it for changes that you want to see in the future. You can do both at the same time. You can say this is problematic, and fortunately, you get some benefits on some people being deplatformed, but you can say both. I do think that you can have that type of nuance.
That's not the conversation, though, Sam. That's the sophisticated conversation we were having weeks leading up to this about how tech companies we're not cracking down on this because they're too big, because their algorithms are built off of hate and violence and white agendas, and they're rewarded for it. Those were the conversations we've been having leading up. But the conversation we're seeing on the left is, well, they can shut down our account. Yeah, no, like you said, no shit. This has been happening for years. This is the moment you want to cry victimhood. On the left, supposed left, it almost mimics the conversation that's happening on Tucker Carlson. I'm not talking about the sophisticated Matt Stoller, Sam Seder argument.
But I think that's a narrow subset. Like, I mean, look, people who are saying that are afraid of their YouTube, losing their YouTube channel. And it's more like people are like afraid of losing their business. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like that it is not a political argument. And I think there are people who are going to be like, I'm afraid of losing my YouTube channel. And so all of a sudden, this is going to be the most important thing to me. And so I don't know. I think that's
the Nazis aren't and Trump never was. This is, I don't buy it. I think that there is an echo chamber of, I mean, I'm curious what you think, because I know you're watching this play out.
Well, no, I mean, look, I what do I think about what? Like, do I think that this is
well, I mean, there's a curious subset of supposed leftists who are literally echoing the same talking points at a time when, it doesn't mean that we don't have deeper conversations about breaking up big tech, right? But that's not the conversation that's happening. And simultaneously have a conversation about the rise of fascism and right-wing extremism and frankly, Nazis, and what we could have done about it. But that energy is not being occupied in that space. And I think it's really dangerous if we want to have this sort of united front against what is clearly becoming an extremely dangerous movement.
My point is, I think, I largely agree with you. I think there is a really important conversation. Like, I think that there is an issue with the fact that Trump was just unilaterally banned and we don't really understand, like, fully what the process was. It's not a big issue and it should not dominate conversation. There's a brand of leftist that isn't really a leftist at this point anymore. They're more just like professional skeptics and critics of everything. And so they're
except Trump.
And so, and some of those people, I respect their work, but not the points that you make isn't the only thing that you can evaluate someone's commentary on. It can also be story selection and what you choose to focus your energy on. And I think the point you're making is that the biggest issue right now is this extreme flex of fascism, this open wound of fascism that just happened at the Capitol building. And we have a right to be judgmental.
Yeah,
of
and I think, frankly,
honestly,
though, I think the subset of people who are expending more time on the issue of corporate censorship at this moment, when, like, look, this has been ongoing, and if there is a solution for it, and present that solution. Push for antitrust. Encourage Josh Hawley to push for antitrust. To the extent that they have weapon. I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah.
To the extent that there are people out there just complaining and talking about, like, the hypocrisy or this and that, the whining and this and that, they're talking to an increasingly small and narrow and frankly shut off group of people. I mean, honestly, it is the same problem. Dedicating too much time to those people is, I think, you're guilty of the same thing that those people are doing, which is you're missing the trees, the forest for the trees. Like,
I mean, I bring it up as a correct the record situation. If you don't address it, it continues to I mean, the reality is that they're getting a lot of clicks on this. It's not a small group of people. I don't know how many of them.
Business. I mean, look, yeah. I mean, I remember when the Times came out with that story about the YouTube radicalizing people. No, you had some YouTube guys like, Jimmy Dore, like, this is absolute bullshit, because that's their business. They don't want their business to dry up. And it was the same thing like with the fairness doctrine, right? You had left-wing talkers, ostensibly, who were like, I don't want a fairness doctrine, because they're afraid of losing their business.
Yeah.
And I just like,
that's right.
There's always going to be those people who are ostensibly going to, this is the same thing what Josh Hawley's doing. And Josh Hawley doesn't care about, in general, the publishing companies are only putting out whatever it is.
By the way, that's the free market. They're making
right.
With your book, it's not. And just to I guess put a bow on my point about also adding what Sam said about antitrust. If you're talking about censorship, about right wingers, and you have legitimate concerns about that, and you're basically just capitulating to, or rather appealing to a specific group of people for clicks, you're feeding into a right wing narrative if you don't lead with the antitrust element, because that's
right.
The objective that we have to go down. And if people aren't doing that and aren't talking about those things and breaking up big tech, then you kind of know where they're at.
Militant apathy. I just saw this pop up here. Hold on a second. I agree with No Miki on this. Josh Hawley can self-publish and make millions. No, I agree with that. He's pimping the Fox News outrage churn. He is a true fascist believer. So using your logic, Sam, you would say Germany's policy on Nazi speech is wrong. I mean, it's certainly wrong for the United States. I mean, I don't think that we should. I think allowing for hate speech in this country. I mean, we have some hate speech laws, but I don't. To the extent that I'm aware of, they outlaw political party. I don't know that I would want that in the United States. But my point is not that that I don't think that Josh Hawley has a point at all. I think I made that very clear. I'm upset that my book's not published. That's not a First Amendment violation. I'm not talking about Josh Hawley. I'm talking more like the idea that, Parler. Now, Parler is going to come back up. They're going to find the same people who house Gab, and it's going to be fine. And I don't really have a problem with Twitter dumping, Donald Trump on this too. I do think there is a problem. We have talked about this many, many times before, with the idea that there are platforms that become the only platform, and it is wildly unregulated. It is allowed to become the platform because it has an ability to hoover up data and buy other things that reinforce it. Facebook gets Instagram and works it in. They buy WhatsApp and they work it in. And all this cross, I think that's a problem. We need to put up firewalls that is going to inhibit their ability to make profit from certain things, and is going to necessarily keep things small. My point is just to the extent that there are people out there on the ostensible left who are making an issue of this, there are not that many of those people. It's a very online phenomenon because they're worried about their ability to make money, or they're just, picking a niche, which is going to be obviously popular with people who are very online. And so what I don't see is any comprehensive, policies talk about antitrust or something to that effect. I mean, if people want to say nationalize these things, that's not what I would do, but at least you're offering something. Otherwise, it's just like this howling and aggrievement, and it's not real. And
but Sam, it's real enough that this is where people are organizing their extremist thoughts or moving into extremism from being aggrieved or angry, or they start with a certain populist left shows supposedly, and then they move into that. And that is how you get, to say it's not real, what happened on the Capitol is a result of these platforms and people meeting on these platforms and feeling aggrieved. I mean, I personally know some people that are on the left who are moving more to the right because they're so angry and literally yelling at me on text message, real life organizers who are so angry about certain things of the last few weeks that they are moving further right. They are literally saying, good, we should have done that at the Capitol. So it's one thing to say, yes, it's a small group of people online, but it's a small group of people online with very large audiences who are not making arguments in good faith, in my opinion. And furthermore, it's capturing, and it's the same thing we said a few weeks ago. It's predatory. It's capturing people's anger and putting it into a conservative argument. And then that's how they get led, frankly, radicalized to the right. And I do think, in moments like this, in moments of crisis, we have to be very conscious of it and offer an alternative argument when these things are brought up. I don't like to dwell on it. I think that we have to focus on the big picture here, but we should also be able to call out their strategy, which is, bogus. And frankly, we're not on a level playing field to begin with. We all know this. If we were all on a level playing field, then you would have just as many viewers as Ben Shapiro or Dan Gugino, whatever the guy is who's getting the most views on Facebook right now.
Bongino is supposedly bankrupt, but I don't know about that. But all right, let's go to the phone. I see your point. I guess it's like, we're on the cusp of watching, the Democrats push to push out a $2,000 check for everybody. We have in the past couple of days, Joe Biden has talked about eschewing austerity and spending trillions of dollars. The only thing that is up in the air in terms of like unknowable is whether they will do it all through reconciliation or they will find a strategy in which to sort of like, we put the $2,000 checks out there and we throw a couple other things in there as well. And then we do the reconciliation. This stuff is going to overwhelm all of this notion about Parler. I can assure you, like, the vast majority of people are just like, whatever. And Parler's going to get back up. And in a week, there's going to be nothing to talk about. And the idea is that, like, you know what Parler didn't do? They just didn't do a backup. We have on this program multiple backups for payment processing. Okay. So it's like, give me a break. This is just best practices. I'm sorry the Mercers didn't know, hired a bunch of, yahoos who didn't know what they were doing.
They cheaped out.
Honestly, give me a break. There's one of the things that happens when you inundate a sector with money, which is the right wing is inundated with money, is that you get a lot of like losers and sloppy people because they don't have to worry about it because they have a sinecure.
Also, good luck giving your money or your personal information to the Mercers. I'm
Indeed.
sure they'll use
it. Right. They're just not best practices because they don't need to. Yeah. The funny thing about that whole world is that they don't have to deal with competition because there's just so much money sloshing around there that mediocrity rises to the top.
Now with Adelson gone, they literally just lost one of their competitors.
Well, arguably, or maybe a source of funding in some instances.
Yeah, that sense.
Going to the phones, calling from 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. I took your call, I think, the other day, and you hung up on me.
Oh, not on purpose. No. That's the shadow ban.
Yep.
I don't know anything about that. Hey, I want to take a step back, look at a couple big picture things. This has been a good conversation, but the guy who tased his balls and died from it, that's not real, right?
I don't know if he tased his testicles, but my understanding is he may have tased himself.
Which guy?
But the lady...
Someone had a heart attack.
Hear about this?
Don't tread on me flag did get trampled to death.
Yes.
Don't take that from me, Sam.
I think that is true.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Fact checker.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about an experience I've had with my local talk radio recently. So I call into my local talk radio all the time, and they really love me over there.
You hang up on them when you get on the phone, or do you actually hang in for a call?
They have what I'll call a soft shadow ban on me. They hang up on me sometimes, but
okay.
I would never hang up on a show that I call into. That wouldn't make any sense. So they right away started saying that it was Antifa because of it just felt kind of Antifa-y to them, right? And my sister actually said this too. My sister has been getting her news from Facebook for like the last year, and she's turned. I mean, it's insanity. But I called in and I pulled a Ben Shapiro on them. I said, well, it's fine that you feel that way, but facts don't care about your feelings, and you need to you need to come up with some evidence of at least one person. And so, and I told them that, Baked Alaska and Nick Fuentes were live streaming. Like, it's not a mystery who was in there. So anyhow, the host looked up these people, and he's not extremely online, this local talk radio host. And I do get the sense that he's genuinely sort of disengaged and unaware of the alt-right in general, and the idea that, like, there's violent elements of the right wing. Like, I really do believe that he's unaware of that. And so he sort of admitted, in the following days that maybe it wasn't Antifa. But the point I wanted to make, when Ezra Klein had this thread about, people have been brainwashed and don't blame them. At first I was a little sympathetic to that point of view, because of my sister, who I think has been, led down a path. And I was thinking about this host who, like, really doesn't know about the alt-right. He's just a Republican guy. He's a Trumpist, of course, but then I remembered a couple things that reminded me that he's been, like, super fashy this whole time. One, on at least one occasion, he is just sort of thrown out that, like, maybe not all people should really be allowed to vote. And I don't remember the exact context in which this has come up, but this is a sort of a popular thing that a lot of people on the right, regular Republicans, not radicals, not the alt-right, will say, if, usually they don't broadcast it, but that they don't really think that, like, the poor should get to vote. And then other things he said, for example, that, like, if you take California out, then Trump would have won.
Right.
Like, yeah, if you just eliminate, the most populous state in the union,
fifth largest economy in the world. Yeah.
Right. So my point is,
that
like,
a threat too?
Yeah.
No,
right.
it's like
Even
the same calculation they do. Like, if you didn't count black people, Donald Trump won by a landslide. Like that type of thing.
Right, and the ladies, take the ladies out of it.
Right, exactly.
No contest. But anyways, the point is, like, even the people who seem like the strongest response I've seen from anyone on the right in my personal life has been sort of tepid, like, oh, I don't know if that was such a good idea. Like, that's the strongest response I've seen. And even those people at other times have said these sorts of things about, like, well, democracy is overrated, basically, and not all people should really get to vote. And so, we're dealing with something that goes, I think, a lot deeper than just, Trumpism, obviously. But, yeah, it's been weird to watch so few people, I've got a cousin who's a libertarian, and on Facebook he's posting. I'm not friends with him, but I hate look him up once in a while, like, to get angry about something, just to see what he's posting, and it's just constant stream of constitutional nonsense. But he just constantly posting about the Constitution. That's my point. And he hasn't said anything. Like, they tried to murder the vice president a week ago. And, so anyways, I don't know. I don't really know why I was calling, other than I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. And, you can have conversations with these people, but yeah.
I think, this is why you need to have things like impeachment, because there's this, we spend all day, every day, talking about this conservative mentality, and the fact that it still can be sort of shocking, like we're doing, like, almost like a stress test, right? Where it's just like, what would these people be okay with? And this is the thing, is that I think, like, people don't appreciate, and the people who are sort of like poo-pooing this, and there's a very small group of people who are poo-pooing it, I think, but There it is still sort of fashionable, I know, on certain parts on the left and whatnot, and obviously on the right, to sort of poo-poo this and like not the big deal. But the idea that it could get this far, and the most remorse you get is like, it was unwise. It was unwise. It was okay, slight mistake to do this, but not really a big thing, or like, let's let bygones be bygones 5 days later. Mm-hmm. It's indicative of just like, this is what they do when they lost. Like, what happens if this, now, was this going to work? Whatever that means. I don't know. I mean, probably not, but that's this time, right? Like the first time they passed a trap law in some state, did it work? No. But I can assure you that trap laws, for the uninitiated, it's basically laws that inhibit a woman's right to choose, that are really sort of frivolous and not associated with getting an abortion, but they're basically just regulations that are put on there to basically prevent people. They're going to pass. Like the point is that there's no guarantee this is ever going to happen again. It could all go away. It could be meaningless, or they could try it again. Yeah. But we've just been put on notice. 1/5 of the caucus of Republicans in the Senate had no problem with everything that led up to this. And frankly, as far as I can tell, don't seem to be saying like they feel bad about it now. And so 1/5. And
now they're claiming it's going to be decentralized in the next few days. It's going to be happening in state capitals across the country in the coming days.
States.
That's the other thing I was going to say about my local talk radio is that today they're saying, boy, yeah, it seems like there's some stuff that's going to go down on the 17th. They know the date. Apparently this is like a date that everyone knows. And they're sort of saying it's not such a great idea. But then like in the next breath, it's all about how Jay Inslee's a fucking tyrant who's ruining our lives. And so they can act surprised by this, but the language that they use, I mean, leading up to this moment, especially, it's been heightened in the last few months. And Sam, I know you'll say that Rush Limbaugh's been using it for 20 years, which is true. But in the last few months, all the callers into the local show have been saying, Biden is a communist. He's a puppet of AOC. And I'm serious.
I know.
And they literally stole the election, and we've got to have our 1776 moment. We've got to fight back, and like it's all right out there. And so something is going to happen.
Here's the thing: if you I don't know, like what does this remind people of? Huge crowd banging on the doors when they're counting votes, right? Angry crowd banging on the door when they're counting votes. They did it 20 years ago down in West Palm Beach. They were all dressed in suits. And this is just the next iteration that we saw at the Capitol, right? I mean, and this is the way this stuff progresses. No one was held to account for any of those, that so-called Brooks Brothers riot. Nobody. Not like it was like perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It was like completely like, oh, it's just a feature of the campaign. And this stuff is being built into the feature of the campaign. And yeah, it's a real problem. I mean, people, that's why this notion of like the placating, the idea that we need to unify by not holding these people to account, it's simply not going to work. What needs to happen, they need to be held to account. This needs to be leveraged for political advantage in terms of like actually putting in policy, because the only way that you're going to, in any way, you're not going to unify the country. That's just not going to happen. We have not had a unified country in a couple hundred years. You're not going to unify the country. What you're going to do is you're going to maybe get just enough of a critical mass that you can keep this under, you can keep it from boiling over. And part of the way you do that is like you provide material benefits for people. And, some of those people are just going to just like chill because all of a sudden they're going to be a little bit more invested. Not the vast majority of them. certainly not the people who fly in on the private jet. Those people are gone. They're revanchist, and they're always going to be here. We're fighting for a margin of people to just basically be able to contain those other people.
Well, and the other thing that I think would be helpful is if we started thinking about driving wedges into the Republican Party so that the leaders of the Republican Party are forced to call it out, including, by the way, and also Joe Biden, who thinks that it's great to have an opposition party. That's the Republican Party. But I mean, here's an example. There were actual Nazis there. There were people wearing Auschwitz shirts there. Republicans, I mean, I'm surprised AIPAC is not speaking up.
I'm not.
Well, I mean, this is where pressure can come in. Like Jews around America who support AIPAC, or anybody who supports AIPAC and believes that this was disgusting and is not reflective of the Republican Party that AIPAC has put so much energy into, should call out AIPAC and say, AIPAC, stand up. This is the time that we stand up against this. These people do not belong in our party, because those are the pressure points of Mitch McConnell, of Lindsey Graham, of all these Republican leaders that want a more dignified party, so that they crack down and that they're bolder and that they support, impeachment, because this is not the party that, and frankly, even maybe some of Trump's family members.
No, that's a great point about, I mean, that's a great way to start in terms of a wedge issue. Way to honor Sheldon Adelson.
I'm channeling his energy through my body today, guys. This is the Sheldon Adelson moment.
Ron Reagan, you got anything else before I let you go call your buddies in local radio?
Oh, no, the morning show is over right now. I think it's Limbaugh or maybe Hannity.
Sorry.
But real quick, so there was a moment right after the election when I knew this was going to be a problem, and I don't want to lay this at fascism at the feet of the Democrats and pretend like it's their problem. But a reporter asked Biden, is it a problem that Trump hasn't conceded yet? And Biden did his sort of, sideways smile. Hey, man, like, it's cool. And he said, we're fine. We don't need him to concede, and we've got everything we need. And I thought, like, they're going to try and do the Obama thing where they pretend like right-wing media doesn't exist. And they're above responding to things like Glenn Beck, or, Glenn Beck really hampered the Affordable Care Act and that whole effort.
Yeah.
And the Obama administration never responded. They just pretended like it didn't exist. And I knew as soon as Biden was acting like concession is no big deal and, whatever, I'm too mature to get down into those muddy waters or whatever, I knew it was going to be an issue. And I just wonder, I'll leave you with this question: like, what can they do to more effectively, combat what is actually fake news?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That seems to be a major problem.
Well, one, let me just say this: like, I don't know. I am very, very, attuned to, Biden's like unity talk and finding that a little bit disturbing. But I was at the very least like encouraged that Chris Coons came out and said we should expel Hawley and Cruz, because he's not doing that on his own. He's doing that with Biden's blessing. So they're being a little bit, cutesy about it. And having, Coons say that means that Biden signed off on it. But this whole fake news thing, I mean, it's a real problem. Yeah. And this is, again, this is like the people who are complaining about censorship and whatnot. Okay, I can see the point that is being made. But the question is, like, the idea that you have, I don't know how many millions of Americans, believe that Joe Biden is in the pocket of AOC. That is, I mean, absurd, but even metaphorically speaking. But I mean, the idea that there's this many people who believe fake news. The question is, like, what do you do about it? We had regulations under the FCC for what can be broadcast, and it's just that we now have a different type of media. There has to be something to address this.
Yeah.
And I, for one, don't want the government censoring it. And again, this is the only thing I can imagine that makes sense is that these things should be siloed. I'm not saying that they should be completely cut off. You should be able to access them, but you shouldn't be able to sort of stumble across this stuff. All this stuff has always existed, right? But you had to go seek it out.
Well, yeah.
Sam, go ahead, Emma. Go ahead.
Well, it's not. You don't just have to seek it out, though. Is the problem? Is that
now you don't have to seek it out because it stumbles into your you are fed
and it feeds on itself.
But my point is that if you have proper regulation, you can silo it. Like you don't have algorithms that drive certain things to you because they know that you might be susceptible to it. They may not know what products you want. It will make your Netflix feed or the equivalent maybe not as efficient, but it will also make your society a better place.
Sam, remember when there were those like chat rooms, the terrorist chat rooms? I mean, they'd shut those down. Where are the limits? I mean, this is terrorism. I mean, I think that's why it's so important to say terrorism.
Well, I don't think it's wise to say that because it will be used against. I do not. It will be used.
Stormed the Capitol armed, wanting to kill a senator and who knows, or a vice president and who knows who else. If that's not terrorism, what is?
Well, I think it's insurrection. I think it's
That's not a legal term though.
Well, but
a movie term.
Well, no, insurrection is illegal.
Insurrection threads that needle that between what you were talking about, Miki, which is not downplaying the horror of what happened, which were terroristic acts, but without using the loaded word of terrorism, which has been used over and over again to justify cracking down on individual liberties in this country.
Sure.
Potentially the ubiquitousness of that word, the overuse of it, could lead to further issues, which you have now Joe Biden saying, oh, we're going to implement new domestic terror laws, as if there aren't enough terrorism laws at the executive and at the federal government's disposal that they could use and just apply. Like Trump and his people just gutted the domestic and white and right-wing terrorism units in all of these law enforcement agencies. Biden could just reinstate those, reallocate funds without having to go down that road. Yeah. There's
no need to laws and to like I think like I am for rolling back the use of the word terror and illegal, criminal, these are all sufficient to punish these people. Insurrection is specifically in the Constitution in regards to like what Hawley and Ted Cruz do. We don't need those things. The point, my point here is that we AOL had to shut down pedophile chat rooms.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it from, I completely agree with you, Emma. And I want to make that very clear before people start coming at me and saying I'm for more terror laws. I'm just saying if we have no problem doing this for people who are organizing or not organizing, frankly, terror channels on chat rooms, whether it's white supremacist. I mean, I'm not even talking about what the lawmakers have deemed terrorism in the last 20 years. I'm talking about Oklahoma City bombing. I'm talking about what was happening in the 90s when they shut down chat rooms because they saw that there was organized white supremacy happening. And it's just taken a new form. That's all I'm saying is
different. I'm talking about like, how do you deal with fake news? Put aside like the idea that people are conspiring to commit a criminal act. Okay. How do you deal with fake news? I mean, I think it's like, I don't think it's even terribly controversial that you can you can violate the terms of services of different places by hate speech. I mean, people go to Gab if they want to be neo-Nazis and this and that. And there's a stigma associated with that. And you can't stumble into it. You have to like go and make an effort to go and do it.
Yeah.
And that is, I think that is at the very least the best case scenario we have now, at least in terms of, I think what we can do is where these things are siloed off. If you want to go be on the racist app, you're going to be on the racist app and you're going to have to acknowledge that, and society can shun you, and you can honestly you can lose your book deal because you're racist. I mean, that's I'm sorry. I have no problem with so-called cancel culture as long as it, like anything else, it needs to be exercised in a way that is reasonable. And I'm quite confident society can find an equilibrium. We have had cancel culture throughout our entire society. It's just that what got you canceled has changed and evolved and has canceled people who used to have power. And that's a problem for them. But I don't find it a problem for society. The real challenge is going to be, like, what do you do with the proliferation of fake news and how profitable it is for people? And my sense is that the way that you diminish fake news is you make it less profitable. It will still exist, but far less people will engage in it because so many people do this to make money. And once you take the profit, the ability to profit out of it, you will find there is a lot less of this stuff going on.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether they're doing it like, well, I do it ideologically, but I also make a ton of money. We'll see how strong that ideology is when they're not making a ton of money. I mean, that's the first step, it seems to me, on fixing this very real problem. We have a very real problem with it. And the way that you make that less profitable, I'm quite convinced, is through, antitrust sounds like a very bland thing, but it really is about making certain endeavors far less profitable and constraining them so that it does not harm society. That is what those laws are about in a nutshell. And that is, for people who are concerned about censorship, and I think, again, I think it's overblown, but I think there is some measure of concern about it. But if you're genuinely concerned about censorship and you want there to be an ability for there to be a parlor, and there will be, it'll be back online in a couple of days. Again, that's just a problem of like best practices. What you do is you push for antitrust to make sure that Amazon, and you know what? Guess what's going to happen to your friends like Tucker Carlson when push comes to shove in debilitating the profitability of these large corporations? It is going to diminish. They are going to be a lot less, vocal about it. I will assure you, because at the end of the day, Tucker Carlson knows where his bread is buttered too. And so, and same with Josh Hawley. They're going to talk a big game about this, but when there's actual policy that you can put into place that will diminish the value or the import, let's put it
when they
this way.
actually have to challenge corporate power as opposed to just talk about how Democrats are connected to elites. The one industry that's elitist, that's not the one, but like especially connected to Democrats, as opposed to big oil, the military industrial complex, whatever is on the Republican side. They don't talk about that. I mean, maybe, but when it comes to policy, then they'll change their tune.
What was the name of that Facebook rival? I can't remember what it was. It was sort of big. Like
MySpace?
No. They tried to do a Facebook rival about 4 or 5 years ago. And it got a little bit of momentum and then just sort of went away. Like if I get booted off that, nobody's going to give an F.
Right.
It's like, I'm sorry. This whole notion of like the town square where everybody should meet. First of all, that's not where everybody's meeting anyways. It happens to be where the media meets. And that's just a way to communicate to the media. But the fact is like, if you're concerned about that, town square, it's a town square. It's a town square. There was never a time in this country where we had town squares where we didn't have multiple ones of them. And so if you want it to be actually a town square, you make them smaller and there's multiple ones.
Well, that's what's going to happen with Trump. Again, I do think there isn't, I know it's not popular right now, but I do think because Twitter is so massive and it's you have to break it up and then you can have multiple town squares. That's the issue. But all it's going to be is people are going to just post screenshots of his tweets on Parler.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. It's fine.
Right.
I mean, that's fine. I mean,
and he might actually create his own little, the weird thing about this OAN and Newsmax thing is he's actually kind of breaking apart the conservative monopoly, which is very scary because the alternative is there's also the decentralized, focus of the conservative movement. It's not a total monopoly. I mean, in one way it is, in that you have Sinclair Media that's bought up every local station with their propaganda. And now they've got Newsmax and OAN. I think the issue that we have on the left is that we just don't have that space.
Yeah.
And so,
and that's not going to change for the foreseeable future.
V
They
asks,
have a lot more money.
V on the IM says, wondering if there's a way to take the profit motive away from something like gun manufacturing by making it a law that every single gun sale has to equal 1 cent or something. No, the way that you make it less profitable for gun manufacturing is you shed their statutory immunity from lawsuits, and you allow trial lawyers to sue them for producing a product that leads to the death, when used properly, leads to the death of people. Mm-hmm. And then you will see that there's a lot less interest in producing a lot of guns. I mean, it's like, that's just the same way you change the behavior with bars, right? Like you used to be like, you could not get not served in a bar, because you could be totally wasted. And it wasn't until there was some liability for the bar that if you were to walk out of that bar totally shit-faced and got into a car and killed somebody, the bar was liable. And,
I don't even know if I agree with that.
Well, I can tell you it changed the behavior of bar owners.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, but like,
do you have a responsibility to suss out whether someone's so wasted that they could get into? I mean,
yeah, but you don't know what once they leave the bar, you have no idea that they're going to get into a car. Someone can be wasted in New York City and not drive, and that's fine.
Absolutely. I mean, but in New York City, you got a much better argument that you had no reason to believe they're in a car. But if your bar, there's only one way to get to your bar, and that's with the people are parked in the front lot.
But with the ubiquitousness of Uber right now, you have no idea how they're going to get home.
It may be.
You could also step out of a bar in New York City and get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Or fall down drunk.
And like, how many times have we seen people in New York City in particular not get, I mean, they really have to be a point of belligerent, like a complete mess in New York. Whereas if you got keys and they see your keys, I mean, we've all seen this happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just a hard and fast rule. It's just a point of like, what is reasonable expectation
some people. Emma, we know you like to have 12 glasses of wine and take long walks to Central Park every night.
Yeah, that's my MO. I just, I've never agreed with that I think there are some things that are personal responsibility, and like getting that drunk and choosing to get that drunk and getting behind the car.
What is your personal responsibility if you're profiting off of like you're selling something? Do you have no responsibility whatsoever? I mean, like, do we have a responsibility to deliver? Do we have a responsibility to deliver? Does the news have a responsibility to deliver information that is vetted and true?
Absolutely.
Why? Why can't the listener have the personal responsibility of saying like, hey, wait a second, I'm going to double check this.
But you're arguing that bars have legal liability for if someone dies, someone gets behind the wheel after getting drunk at their bar and kills somebody.
I think there should be liability for news organizations that go out and lie about COVID.
But I mean, they fall under different legal provisions, and also you're not selling per news item.
Yes, exactly.
Well, fair enough. But I think that like you get into First Amendment issues there. But if that dynamic is in any way legitimate to sell a product that in a way that is irresponsible, I think it's problematic.
I just don't know how you can prove, and I think there's a lot of
it's up to a jury.
Right, okay, but like
it's not flawed at all.
People hide their drunkenness more than others. You don't know that someone's getting behind.
Well, but this is all evidence that you present at a trial. Like if somebody comes up and they don't appear drunk, and you have other patrons in the bar going like they didn't appear drunk, versus like somebody comes up, they're falling all over themselves, they're vomiting on themselves, and they're like, I want another drink. Yeah, here's my car keys. I'm going out and drive my car.
Okay,
and
but
then
that would never happen.
Well, not anymore.
All right.
But there's a reason why it doesn't happen anymore. Because, it used to happen. And then at one point, like a couple of bars got sued, and that was it. Then the owners of the bar said, like, hey, don't serve anybody who's visibly drunk. And, you have reason to believe he's driving home. And that changed.
All right.
All right. Here
I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Here is talking about
weirdest fight ever, guys. I'm just gonna say.
I gave up.
Here's fake news, ladies and gentlemen. Even Alex Jones is fed up with it.
Oh my God, I love this.
Alex Jones taking Q to task. He does not want the competition, folks. He's got his own narrative to tell. He doesn't like Q's narrative.
He's the gatekeeper, the boutique right.
We broke all that. We know that. I'm saying Q tells us stuff and all of it's lies is what I'm saying.
You keep interrupting me.
Because you're lying. Because you're full of shit. That's why. Because every goddamn thing out of you people's mouths doesn't come true. And it's always, oh, there's energy and now we're done with Trump. You said he was the Messiah. You said he was invincible. You said it was all over. They were all going to Gitmo. Now, he's part of a larger thing of Q. I will not suffer your Q people after this. I knew what you were day one, and I know what you are now, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of all these witches and warlocks and pumpkin popsums and everything. Oh, God. Sorry. Bye-bye, Q. I can't talk to you anymore. Jesus, Lord help me.
Warlocks.
Yeah, everything that you have said in your entire career has given birth to this movement, but sure, divorce it now. Get rid of it now.
Well, what he's talking about is resenting that there is a competing fake narrative out there. He wants to go back to the Bilderberger group. He wants to go back to changelings and this and that. The Q stuff is too, really, I think what his complaint is like, you guys keep putting dates on stuff. Like you guys keep making predictions that things are going to happen. The way you do this is you just talk about fake things that will never be able to be disproved.
Yeah.
Like the reason why you can't come out and say there's no weather machine is because they're hiding it from you. The reason why you can't say that there's not a one world government that's up there controlling everything we do because it can't be proven. He knows you don't say this is going to happen on January 7th because January 7th shows up at one point. It cuts into business.
Well, business is the operative word here. He is running a business, and the business right now seems to be creeping into more normal spaces like Joe Rogan's show regularly. And God forbid he lose his base, which Q is stealing from, while he is trying to expand into a more normal world of Joe Rogan and wherever else he goes on. Yeah. And I think it's about keeping his business vibrant. How do you keep the base and grow?
But do we all not forget that the fixation on pedophilia in government began with Alex Jones?
We don't forget.
Alex Jones talking about pedophiles all the damn time. A weird obsession with pedophiles that, I don't know. I don't think about pedophiles that much. Not as much as Alex Jones, but he talked about it all the time, got it into the Republican or far right conspiracy theory, Trump supporting consciousness. And that's what birthed Q. So you don't get to, what's the name of the term when you get rid of your child? When you
disown? Disown?
Don't get to disown your child Q.
She's still in that other headspace, guys. We have to go back to the argument about the bar, please.
Here is Alex Jones on Wednesday basically saying, don't do this, guys. I need to, he's watching his creation sort of get out in front of him, and he doesn't know how to deal with it. And part of it was also his deplatforming definitely hurt him. Right? This is the thing is that, and he is on other platforms, but This is my point about this is the way you deal with this stuff. Things became a little bit less profitable. It was harder to bump into him. And now he's worried because he's like, there's just too many options for insanity out there on the right. What am I going to do? So here he is, Alex Jones, voice of reason.
Listen to me! USA! USA! USA!
Listen to me!
USA! USA!
Yeah.
USA! 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 Listen to me! Listen to me! We've got a permit on the other side. It's great that this happened. But the Trump's not going to come when we've taken this over. We're not Antifa. We're not BLM. You're amazing. I love you. Let's march around to the other side. And let's not fight the police and give the system what they want.
He's actually telling people, this is on Wednesday, not to crash the Capitol. He is saying, like, you know, like it's the most strategic thing I've ever heard him say. And it is. I think he realizes, like, this whole like Q phenomena, like this is all like, this is going further than he can go.
Well, he started, like, I know Pizzagate started in the corners of the internet. He was the number one Pizzagate guy, the number one Pizzagate guy. That created the seed. Hillary Clinton is a pedophile running a pizza ring. Donald Trump's going to get elected. And it's actually more than Hillary Clinton, right? There's other pedophiles in government. And Q was the whistleblower within the government that is talking about all these pedophiles. The idea that he thinks he has any authority on this matter to talk about how Q is insane, you're the godfather.
Oh, he's definitely the godfather about it. And he also, I mean, remember, like he had the whole the Newtown families were.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Not like, I think he's just realizing, like, this is just gotten out of his sort of control. I mean, that, you know, that was a perfect metaphor. That moment is like, nobody's listening to me. We'll just start chanting USA and then get everybody's attention, and then go and say this. And then, of course, nobody listened to him anyways. So I think this guy, like, realizes, like, he's headed to, you know.
Well, it has an effect again on his business. What happened after Pizzagate, when there was actual violence, when there was actual, like, threats, physical threats, he learned a lesson, just exactly what the limitations to incitement are being deplatformed. Meanwhile, every time I listen to him, my vocal cords feel strained.
I know.
Alex Jones. I don't know if I can do it these days.
Do it.
Everyone, we need to.
That's like Kermit the Frog.
They stop to steal, people. I'm telling you right now what we need to do. Stop it.
There is so
Takes
much
a little more time for me to listen
gravel.
Oh, I want to talk about this. All right. This because let's leave this side of the equation off. Like, one of the things that is, you know, it's going to be interesting to see just how hard this comes back is the corporate media. I mean, it's just so weird because this feels like a throwback clip to me from literally 15 years ago, where we have the corporate media basically completely misrepresenting the reality of what has been going on in our politics, as if none of the past 4 years have existed. And I think people know that I'm quite critical of Nancy Pelosi. I would prefer someone who, and just about anybody, to be congressional leader. And I don't think she does a particularly good job here. It's just that listen to Leslie Stahl's sort of like version of history or just reality that exists right now. It is fascinating. Here is Leslie Stahl interviewing Nancy Pelosi last night. And there is just like, this generation is just so completely, in many respects, they're living in an alternate reality as well. Listen to this. And we can't show the video because we can't show the video because we'll get dinged by 60 Minutes. But go ahead.
In the election in November, someone said that the mandate that the Democrats won was not about issues because you lost so many seats.
Pause it for one.
That the mandate was for
this. I don't know if people remember this, but this construction, someone said, this is what she said. Someone said the Democrats did not win a mandate. Somebody said, what are you talking about?
Your uncle down at the bar?
No, you're saying it. Like, what do you mean someone said? Say who said it. Because it's important who says this, because if you're trying, why do you even need to say someone? You're trying to say as if this idea exists out there, right? And it's not my idea.
Sam, it's access journalism. That's what that is.
Whose idea?
Many people are saying.
Yeah, many people are saying. I mean, this. But here she goes into this, and when did we hear the conversation of what mandate Donald Trump had? He lost by 3 million votes.
Right.
He won the Electoral College, but he lost by 3 million votes.
And what I thought she was going with there, which she doesn't ask, spoiler alert, which I thought was, it's not a mandate on Democratic policies, it's an anti-Trump vote.
That's where she's going. That's
not what she says.
Well, she's saying it's like tone. Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
One was not about issues because you lost so many seats. That the mandate was for tone and attitude and a strong desire for compromise.
I do know that it was a mandate for us to go forward with an agenda for America's working families, as well as to do so in tone. I always say to our members, we have a responsibility to find common ground. When we can't, we must stand our ground, but we have a responsibility to try.
You, yourself, are not known as a person who compromises.
What?
No, I am. I compromise. We want to get the job done. I'm mischaracterized by the Republicans that way, but that's a tactic that they use. No, we want results for the American people.
What about the COVID relief package?
Yeah.
That was held up for 8 months?
No.
Pause
but that was their...
Pause it 1 second. And now, I have been very critical of Nancy Pelosi, but just reality is reality. I don't know what in the world she could possibly be talking about. What COVID relief package was held up by 8 months? They passed the HEROES Act in the House over the summer. Now, that's the only thing that has passed since March.
And McConnell
was in the House.
Refused to take it up.
McConnell, if she wanted to go to Chuck Schumer and say, you prevented McConnell from passing a bill there, okay, that's true. It was, they inhibited the passage of a crappy bill in the Senate. But I'm sorry, she works for 60 Minutes. She's considered an important news person. What she's talking about is complete garbage. They passed something in the House, period, end of story.
And you could make the case that she's trying to make, but she has her facts wrong, that, within the last 6 weeks, it seemed like the White House gave you an opening. That's a fair critique, because Pelosi...
You could say that.
You could, but that's not what she said, because she's either not prepared or she's parroting Republican talking points to a T. When she says someone said that, is that literally a Republican contributor to CBS? Because that's the only thing that makes sense.
All right, continue with this.
Obstruction. I understand this.
Well, wait.
Was there obstruction?
Yours too.
Was there obstruction?
No, yours too. Takes
no,
two
it wasn't obstruction.
You held out for 8 months.
No, we held it up because there was no respect for our heroes, our state and local healthcare workers, police and fire.
Now you're going to get pissed at Pelosi.
Now I'm going to get pissed at Pelosi because she can't even answer a simple question and say, I don't know what you're talking about. We passed a bill in July. We passed a bill in July. I don't know what you're talking about. You want to talk about obstruction? Seriously? And no, I got to hear it. It does not. It takes two to tango. She was about to say that, and that drives me nuts. It takes two to tango. Tangoing is very hard to do. So you need two people. It does not take two people to obstruct. One can obstruct.
And there
it doesn't
is
take
one
two
that
people
does.
to fight. One person
One
can pound on the
does.
other person. Tango is a hard thing to do. That's what that said. That's what the point of that is.
Why not take the fight to Mitch McConnell there? Why not say it is one person that obstructs? It's the one guy that held up the package that we passed back in May.
Right.
What 8 months is she talking about?
Exactly. This is like, and this is.
May to now isn't even 8 months.
It is.
Is it?
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, this is what like this, like literally, like it gives me like, like a traumatic syndrome, like to just remember like what it was like 10 years ago, where it's just, and you have Democrats who are feckless in responding to this. Honestly, like this is supposedly what Nancy Pelosi's bred for, right? Is to deal with the mainstream media, but it's a complete, like, she's on her heels. Like, don't go out for interviews. Send somebody else out there. It's just ridiculous. This is absurd. And the problem is, like, this is the mainstream consumption of news, right? There's going to be people who just watch this interview, and that's going to be their entire sort of political knowledge. Yeah. And it's going to be like, seems like the Democrats really obstructed. They had the House. Right. The Republicans had the Senate and the presidency. There can be no exchange.
On the other hand, Sam, could this be your misogyny talking?
Against who? Stahl or Pelosi? Both of them? No, I mean, what's so frustrating about Stahl is Leslie Stahl has, she's been doing this since like Jimmy Carter years, right? She has been an anchor, but that I think is ultimately the problem. That you have the two of them who are just who are of an age where it's both sidesism, and there's no both sidesism here on either side of their arguments. Both of them are doing both sidesism in an era where it's extraordinarily clear who is to fault.
I mean, and it's part of that. It's the lack of willingness there. It's a disease in the Democrats to fight to Republicans. And we're, I mean, it's so extraordinary in this case with Trump and the insurrection that, yes, obviously they're doing so. But other than that, I mean, zilch.
Folks, you're going to be really bummed with me, but I'm sorry. We don't have any time to take any more calls. I mean, I'm going to take some IMs and we're going to get out of here. I would love to do a 4-hour show every day, but I can't do it. I cannot do it.
I mean, would you love to do that? Stop lying to your listeners.
Oh, no. Come on. Don't encourage him.
You do the morning show too. So technically, I guess it is sort of,
it doesn't take so, but I could go another hour. I mean, if I,
no, it's actually my fault because I have an interview after this that I have.
Emma has an interview,
so I need the studio.
I have a show too, guys.
Kid tested, Politburo approved. Pause it. It's very hard to tango. That would have been in Michael's voice, I imagine. All right, let's go to Tim Pulitzer. You should stop trying to debate libertarians and just invite on Republicans at this point, as the mental gymnastics to being one of the latter are far more impressive these days. Pokemon is cool, and congrats on 1.1 million YouTube subscribers. Any thought on the sudden praise for social democracies yesterday on Morning Joe? What? No. Is that right? I'm not aware of that.
Have to see.
American capitalism versus Nordic capitalism. The most successful capitalist free markets on earth are the Nordic countries, according to Joe. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe we should pull that. From the New York Times, I'm Michael Barbero. Well, Sam, I never thought your quickie bullshit would outlast me, but it may very well happen. I got caught up in the glitz and glamour of early morning news brief podcasting and ignored my journalistic compass. Beware of her allure, Sam. Don't hold on too tight. It's
Do it in
Tuesday,
the Michael Barbaro
January
voice.
12th. I don't know.
No, it's just, I'm Michael Barbaro.
Uchi Wally. Here's some great advice that I give that everybody ignores. It's not your internet that's behaving. It's probably Wi-Fi if you're using that. People think their Wi-Fi is good because sites like YouTube buffer so much it masks the inherent problems with it, especially if you live in an apartment building. Use an Ethernet cable.
I'm using an Ethernet cable.
So. Boom. There you go. Emma's Pokemon card collection. anticipate violence to be worse on Inauguration Day? Or do you think security will be prepared this time around?
I think they'll be more
They're going to have like
prepared,
11, 12,000 National Guardsmen out on Inauguration Day. Although I would not be surprised to see it in other state capitals around the country. I would not be surprised to see violence, but I wouldn't see it in Washington, D.C. is my guess.
Yeah.
Carl from the Geest, majority reports sweater vest when. I feel like there's so many people who would be mad at me if I did that. Just like in terms of from a style perspective, I can't.
Selling them, you mean?
Yeah.
Just take the sweatshirts and rip the sleeves off. Do it old school style.
Maybe we could do it that way, like a sweatshirt. Now that force the vote appears to be behind us, I hope the online left can reunify against the very important strategy of forcing Sam Seder to get into Pokemon. Buckaroo Samurai, our press is failing us in regards to the GOP calls for unity. Any congressperson who makes that statement should be forced to respond to 1/4 of the House voting to overturn Biden's election after a coup attempt. Why didn't the House impeach on Friday? I think it's because they would have needed unanimous consent, and they knew they wouldn't get it. And so they needed to get it back into regular session. I think that's what the case was. But I imagine there was also probably some hesitancy. Fairchild, I enjoyed Michael and comedy tribute. I struggle with the role of humor in left politics. I can't stop making jokes, especially when the world is so serious. I'm pretty sure no one listens to me anyways. Thanks, Soy Boy. You're welcome. Ice Team Fur. Everyone knows the publishing industry did not exist until the ratification of the first change to the Constitution of the United States in the late 18th century. Bandongino. Soy contains phytoestrogen, which has similar molecular structure, but no related effect to the hormone estrogen. Total misunderstanding of science born from masculine insecurity, which is really emblematic of the right. There you go.
Well, it definitely affects women's estrogen. If you have breast cancer,
Yes.
Sorry, don't mean to go down the rabbit hole of how it affects women.
Yeah, you aren't supposed to have.
Wow.
Public health announcement. Want to make it very clear.
Stacy Wolf says, not sure what's going on with the audio, but it's borderline unlistenable sometimes. Wasn't like this before the new year, I don't think. Seems worse when a guest calls in. Anybody else notice that?
Your audio gets ducked when you're on the board.
Right.
It sucks. COVID.
Matt in town. We're working on it, folks. We're working on a new system, and hopefully we'll be able to roll that out shortly. Speaking of which, reports of armed Trump protesters at Texas state capitol. There you go. Really cool. Invite Ramesh Srinivasan on the show. He's a big tech free speech issues. He's good.
Had him before. Sure. I think so. Back in the day.
Communist dog. The People's Republic of California is flush with tax revenue, an additional $25 million thanks to taxing the rich. And the rich are doing so well during this pandemic, they made up for a $10 billion shortfall of the middle class. Now there's a $15 billion surplus, triggering Jarvis-Gann tax rebates over limit surplus. All right, two more. Alexis 485. Was that Facebook rival called aloe? Yes, that's what it was.
Krello?
Aloe.
Aloe. I never heard about this.
Yeah.
Is
And
it invite only elitist?
Nug Wrangler. Sam, I'll let you use my pickup line. I may not be a communist, but I would seize the means of your production, if you know what I mean. And the final I am of the day. Ryan Cole John Brown was executed for treason against the state of Virginia, a state to which he owed no loyalty. That's cancel culture. Nomi, Emma, great job. Matt, Brendan, great job, guys. See you folks tomorrow.
Bye, guys. Come to my show. Stop everything.